Chapter 388, A Strong Body. After 4 hours, Ziying and Qinhuang had refined the energy from the Duanyan sword and transformed it into chaotic force which made its way into Jian Chen's dantian. The two wisps of smoke, the chaotic force, weaved around Jian Chen's dantian. Although it was there, he couldn't feel tremendous power from the chaotic force. Not even a single speck could be felt, giving him the impression that this gas was almost useless. Despite all of this, Jian Chen didn't dare underestimate its power. He could understand perfectly well that these two strands of chaotic force were formed from the energy of ruler armaments. Perhaps, the power of the chaotic force was so far outside Jian Chen's depth of perception that he couldn't possibly understand the abilities of it. After Ziying and Qinhuang had refined the energy from the ruler armaments into chaotic force, they went back into Jian Che's mind to rest. This left only Jian Chen sitting on his bed to study the chaotic force within his body. The chaotic force is so strong that if one wishes to cultivate with it, one will need the chaotic body first. Without a strong enough body, a regular body will not be able to handle the chaotic force circulating from within. This means that the chaotic force is completely useless for me to use right now. Jian Chen thought with furrowed eyebrows. Since this is the case, I will use some of the chaotic force to refine my body and grow stronger. Although the chaotic force is not enough for me to create a chaotic body, it will at the very least allow me to make my current body stronger. Jian Chen thought to himself before quickly coming to a conclusion. After this conclusion, Jian Chen immediately began to use some of the chaotic force to refine his body. Fortunately, he had cultivated with the Azulite sword laws for some time, so he had a large amount of experience cultivating with it. Although there was a sparse amount of the chaotic force, it was still strong enough for him. Willing a single strand of chaotic force to leave his dantian, Jian Chen finally began to feel the intensity of it as it began to travel throughout. As soon as it started to spread, he began to feel weak as if his entire body was made from tofu. Wherever the chaotic force traveled, Jian Chen's body racked with unbearable pain. His meridians threatened to break, and his inner organs began to fail. Even his blood vessels were starting to tear. Despite it not being a large concentration of chaotic force, it was still a foreign type of energy that Jian Chen's body couldn't handle. Jian Chen had used the Azulite sword laws to cultivate his body, but it was the very first time he had encountered such a pain from doing so. On the bed, Jian Chen's body constantly trembled as his face grew as pale as paper. Beads of sweat continued to drip down his face in large concentration, and his normally handsome face had twisted up from all of the pain with the occasional muscle spasms. Finally, a muffled sound of pain escaped from Jian Chen's throat. He could no longer hold back the intensity of the pain as it had already far surpassed his pain tolerance 1,000 times over. The intense feeling of pain tormented his nerves and mind, even he could not withstand it and finally fainted from the pain. Ah, Master, just why would you use the chaotic force to temper your body now? Your body as it is not yet adequate. This would only serve to make you suffer. Master, you must endure this. Suddenly, Qinhuang's voice suddenly called out in a hurried manner. Master, you must stay determined. Although the chaotic force is destroying your body, it is also recreating it. After this one time, the next few times will be easier to manage. Ziying's voice could be heard as well. Gritting his teeth in pain, Jian Chen couldn't even say a word in response because of the pain. Not even a single syllable could be uttered coherently. As the tiny wisp of chaotic force continued to travel through his body, Jian Chen felt as if miniature explosions were happening all throughout his entire body. The pain caused his muscles to break and blood to come out of his pores, dyeing his entire body red. In a flash, the chaotic force had spread throughout every part of his body, and he had already lost 1/3 of his energy. Sighing, Jian Chen prepared to use the Radiant Saint force to heal his body when Ziying's voice popped up in his mind. Master, don't stop yet. Clenching his teeth, he gave up the idea of resting and continued to try and withstand the circulation of the chaotic force through his body. After a while, the pain in Jian Chen's body began to alleviate as the chaotic force made its third circulation around his body before disappearing. Seemingly as if he had lost all his energy, Jian Chen fell down to the bed below as if he was a pile of mud. Master, you've managed to take the first step. After experiencing pain for the first time, you will have an easier time cultivating the chaotic force in the future. Naturally, the time the chaotic force was in your body will not be as intense as before. Ziying and Qingsua's voice both spoke with some joy. But Jianchen was powerless to respond. Laying back on the bed, he thought about the pain he had just experienced with some terror. This pain was something that he couldn't possibly endure again. After resting for a moment to regain some energy, he began to use the radiant saint force within the world to treat his wounds. By now Jianchen's mind ability was extraordinarily strong. His ability to control the radiant saint force was far better than before, so the entire room basked in the milky white glow. However, since it was daytime, the light wasn't all too obvious and would escape any regular person's notice. This time, Jianchen had only spent 2 hours before his body was fully recovered, since the healing effect was far stronger than before. Jianchen stood up from his bed and inspected his body. This time, he could feel that his body was definitely stronger than before, but however much stronger he was now, he didn't know. Noticing that his body and clothes were drenched in blood, Jianchen took out a towel and wiped himself clean before putting on a new pair of white robes and leaving the room. Right now it was already noon. Spreading out his senses, Jianchen quickly found out where little Fatty was and soared over to him. Because Jianchen was flying toward little Fatty in the direction he was facing, the Fatty quickly noticed Jianchen. Stopping what he was doing, little Fatty looked at Jianchen respectfully. Jianchen, flying in the air must be great, huh? Smiling, Jianchen replied, little Fatty, you have an amazing father and grandfather. I believe that you will be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master realm soon enough. It's far too early to see. I heard my father say that he was 56 years old when he became a Heaven Saint Master. I'm only 21 years old, that means I've still 30 years to go. Little Fatty spoke somewhat subdued. He was still only a primary Great Saint Master that had only made the breakthrough a month ago. However, being a Great Saint Master at the age of 21 was the sign of a genius within the Tianyuan continent. Furthermore, he had done so by painstakingly cultivating by himself without any other resources. Slapping little Fatty's shoulder, he consoled him, little Fatty, don't be discouraged. Your current prowess is already great. In the outside world, the amount of people that reach the Great Saint Master realm at your age can be counted on your fingers. At the very mention of the outside world, little Fatty's eyes lit up straight away. His eyes stared into Jianchen as he asked, really? Jianchen, then I would be considered amazing in the outside world? That's. Little Fatty, I'll tell you about that later. I came to find you for your help. Jianchen quickly avoided the subject. What's the problem? Speak, Jianchen, I'll definitely help you. Little Fatty immediately stood straight up and pledged. Taking a few steps back, Jianchen spoke honestly, little Fatty, use your saint weapon to strike me. Wah, attack you? Little Fatty was stunned at the request. That's right. Little Fatty, even if you strike me, you don't have to worry since it won't do much damage. Jianchen spoke seriously. Little Fatty began to hesitate for a moment, but when he thought about how Jianchen was a Heaven Saint Master, his heart began to calm down. Fine then, but you can't hit me. I'm not a match for you by any means. With that, little Fatty's saint weapon appeared in his hand in the form of a pitch-black battle axe. Seeing this, Jianchen looked at little Fatty with some surprise. Little Fatty, don't tell me you have a dark attributed saint force? He nodded his head, that's right. My father told me that the dark attribute is a rarely seen thing, but my grandfather has the same attribute as well. Elder Xiao is also a dark attribute cultivator? Jianchen thought, but he was quickly cut out from his thoughts as little Fatty spoke. Jianchen, be careful, I'm going to strike. Little Fatty's battle axe began to glow a dangerous dark color before he charged straight for Jianchen. Because little Fatty was under the misunderstanding that Jianchen had wanted to test his own strength, he didn't hold back his strength at all and swung his axe. There was only a flash of dark light as little Fatty's axe ripped through the sky and smashed against Jianchen's shoulder. The violent amount of saint force rippled through his saint weapon before ripping apart Jianchen's clothes at the shoulders, revealing the pale white skin underneath. Seeing how Jiangchen hadn't dodged at all and received the full blunt of the attack, little Fatty's face grew white as he cried, "Jiangchen, why didn't you dodge?" In the next moment, his eyes widened as he looked on in disbelief. That was because he had noticed that Jiangchen had received no damage at all despite putting up no defense. At the very most, there was a faint impression on his shoulder. How is that possible? Am I going blind or something? Little Fatty couldn't believe his eyes. He had swung with all of his might, but his strike hadn't even managed to break the skin. Ha ha ha, seeing just how he had taken no damage at all, Jiangchen began to laugh with a great smile. His heart had soared with joy at this. A chaotic body was extremely strong. His body had become extremely strong after tempering it with just a single wisp of chaotic force. If he continued to temper his body like this, an Earth Saint Master or even a Heaven Saint Master would not be able to harm him. Chapter 389, The Road Home. Jiangchen, your body, just how is it so strong? Are you made of iron or something? Little Fatty's eyes grew wide as he looked at the small mark on Jiangchen's body. Taking out a new robe from his space ring, Jiangchen laughed. Being made of iron would be a stretch, but my body is definitely stronger than an ordinary person. There was some fascination to little Fatty's eyes as he spoke. How did you strengthen it? It's like you transformed your body. Laughing, Jiangchen didn't give an answer. Looking at the still unfinished field, Jiangchen asked, Little Fatty, do you need my help? Yes, of course. My dad and grandfather went to plant corn and I'm left with all the vegetables here. You came here just in time, with 2 people, it'll take no time at all to finish the rest of the planting. Little Fatty spoke very casually with Jiangchen and handed several seeds to him. I'll plant on this side, you go to that side, with the 2 of us working, we'll be able to finish this before dinner. Planting the seeds with Little Fatty, Jiangchen spoke, Little Fatty, it is very possible that I will be leaving this place soon. Little Fatty's hand shook for a brief moment before he continued to silently work in the fields. Not too long after, he finally uttered a single sentence, I knew that life here wouldn't work out for you. Sooner or later, you would have left for the outside world. Letting out a long breath of air, Jiangchen spoke, Little Fatty, I will talk to your grandfather tonight and have him consent to you being able to explore the outside world. You staying here forever is no suitable way of living, with your talent, staying here would just bury it. Jiangchen, just what is the outside world like? Little Fatty stared at Jiangchen with a fixated gaze as he waited for an answer. He had grown up in this secluded village without ever leaving the valley. Any information he knew from the outside world had been learned from word of mouth. He had never once seen it for himself, not knowing just how large it was. The outside world is huge, tremendous even. There are many people with many wondrous things. At the same time, the world is also very cruel and complex. Little Fatty, when you see the outside world for yourself, you will come to understand. Jiangchen spoke. But, my grandfather would never let me leave. Little Fatty's face grew a little sad at that. I will talk with your grandfather tonight and try to convince him. Other than talking to his grandfather, Jiangchen had no other solution. Elder Xiao was a person with an immeasurable amount of power. Jiangchen had no wish to offend him. In a flash, the sun had begun to set to the west and the night began to overtake the skies. The bright red rays from the sunset could still be seen splashing across the sky as the chimneys in the village bellowed smoke into the air and danced in the wind. In a hurry, the 2 men quickly walked back home. After walking to their own rooms, Jiangchen quickly went into his room to check up on the tiger cub. Right now, the tiger cub was sleeping, as the heavenly resources it ate earlier had not yet finished being absorbed. Seeing how the tiger was safe and sound, Jiangchen left the room in relief before eating dinner with the rest of the family. However, there was one less pair of plates and chopsticks. Seeing this empty space, Little Fatty asked, Grandfather, where is father? Little Fatty, your father has some matters to take care of, eat your meal. Elder Xiao smiled kindly with an affectionate gaze toward the fatty. Got it. Little Fatty replied before growing slightly dark. He knew that with his father had gone to the outside world, the world that he himself yearned to go to. Jian Chen's eyes flickered over to Elder Xiao for a moment as he hesitated. Then, he finally opened his mouth and spoke. Elder Xiao, have you never thought about little fatty going out to gain some experience? As he spoke, Jian Chen's eyes stared heavily at Elder Xiao. As expected, the elder's face began to change in color, but Jian Chen quickly spoke up before Elder Xiao could reply. Elder Xiao, allowing little fatty to live in this village his entire life would be detrimental to him. If he lives here for his entire life, little fatty will miss out on the many pleasures in life. Living here would not truly be growing up. If he doesn't experience the wind and rain of the outside world, he won't experience a true growth. I'm also sure you know of little fatty's dislike for this life. If you care for little fatty's growth, you shouldn't keep him forever locked up in this village. This is no way to become an adult. In the end, this would only serve to harm him instead of helping. Hearing this, the elder went quiet for a moment. He had traveled the continent himself for many years and experienced many things, so he could understand little fatty's desire perfectly clear. The problem was that he truly did not wish for little fatty to venture out into the outside world. With his countless experiences, he had seen straight through the very essence of the world, and now he only desired for little fatty to live safely within the valley. If he stayed in this valley, then little fatty would stay as pure and innocent as snow without being polluted by the mortal world. Jian Chen continued to fire off reason after reason for the elder to hear for the sake of allowing little fatty to leave the valley. Racking his mind for any reason imaginable, Jian Chen tried his best to use them all as an argument. As if Jian Chen had addressed each of Elder Xiao's worries, he was completely silent throughout the meal and ate in a stiff-like movement. Grandfather, it wouldn't be right to grow up without seeing the outside world at least once. I really wish to go out just once. Little fatty looked at his grandfather almost pathetically. Father, Jian Chen speaks the truth. I know that you have reached a realm that we cannot even dream of seeing and seen things we have not seen. But little fatty is an inexperienced great saint master who has not experienced many things. He has no idea what goes on in the outside world, and the things you've seen, he has not. If he does not go travel the world, then he will never mature as an adult. Father, if you truly look out for little fatty's best interests, let him experience the world for himself and increase his knowledge. If he comes across some trouble in the future, he must learn to face it with his own power. Little fatty's mother spoke out earnestly with a kind yet naturally refined voice. Her words were filled with the bearings of a refined woman, one that came from a wealthy family. At Jian Chen's and little fatty's mother's twin-prong assault, Elder Xiao finally let out a long sigh. Forget it, forget it. Your words are not without flaws. I was stubborn for far too long. Little fatty, if you truly wish to explore the outside world, your grandfather will not stop you. Really? You'll really let me explore the outside world? Little fatty was overjoyed. Seeing the look of pure joy on little fatty's face, Elder Xiao couldn't help but sigh to himself mentally. Looking into his heart, he concluded that when he made little fatty stay here, it was the wrong choice of action. Placing another mouthful of food into his mouth, Elder Xiao said, Little fatty, if you want to leave, then your grandfather won't stop you. But you must have the strength of an Earth Saint Master before you can go. All right. Father, I'll work hard at cultivating and make the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master. Little fatty was not discouraged at all. Seeing how happy little fatty was, even his mother couldn't help but let out a smile as well. 3 days quickly went by peacefully. On the third day, Jian Chen and little fatty were both cutting down timber in order to rebuild the burned-down house Jian Chen was in. This was the promise that Jian Chen had made. After completing the house, Jian Chen had bid farewell after promising that the two would meet a year from now at this spot. When little fatty becomes an Earth Saint Master, they would leave together. Until then, Jian Chen would leave with the tiger cub. Before he left, however, Jian Chen held a space ring. This was given to him by Elder Xiao and contained many of the heavenly resources from the nearby mountain ranges. For the sake of the tiger cub, these resources were given to Jian Chen. With the tiger cub, Jian Chen flew far away from the valley without stopping so that he could find a space gate to return to the Jessen Kingdom. The distance from here to the Jessen Kingdom was far too wide. Even if Jiangchen were to fly the entire distance without stopping, it would take a tremendous amount of time and energy. So, the only solution was to use a space gate. Unfortunately, space gates were exceedingly rare throughout the Tianyuan continent. Although there was a space gate in Mercenary City, he wasn't able to use that one. Other than Mercenary City, however, Jiangchen had no idea where the closest space gate could be. The tiger cub suddenly began to growl, breaking Jiangchen out of his thoughts. Looking down, he could only see the cub staring off in the distance at some large piece of land while both of its paws swung wildly in midair. Jiangchen was unable to figure out just what the cub was trying to do or what it was thinking about. The tiger cub's rear paws pressed against Jiangchen's chest as its front two paws scratched in the direction of the forest. The wings on its back began to unfold almost as if it was about to fly out from Jiangchen's embrace. Holding the cub tightly, Jiangchen gently caressed its head before following the cub's stare and landing on a nearby tree branch. Transitioning to the ground, the cub leaped down and began to break out into a wild run towards several trees that were hundreds of meters tall. When Jiangchen arrived, he couldn't help but to laugh out loud. It turns out that this place was filled with spirit mushrooms. They were purple in color and weren't all too large. At the very most, they were 20 centimeters tall and 10 centimeters wide. But when the tiger cub saw them, its mouth began to water, allowing Jiangchen to realize these were heavenly resources. Although the size and age of a spirit mushroom was generally small and young, not every heavenly resource needed to be old in age or big in shape. Carefully picking some of the spirit mushrooms, he gathered some for the impatient tiger cub and began to feed them to the cub, who purred affectionately. "Come and eat some." Jiangchen laughed as he fed them one by one into the cub's jaws. With a cheerful purr, the cub continued to swallow the mushrooms before quickly going into hibernation to absorb their energy. Chapter 390, Qinhuang Kingdom. The road was peaceful once more. Jiangchen never met another flying magical beast as he flew past the mountain ranges. Once past the mountain ranges, Jiangchen was flying 1,000 meters in the air where the cold winds constantly blew against his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind with a flapping sound. His left hand held the white tiger cub, and his right hand held a map he had gotten from his space ring. This map contained details of the surrounding area to a good extent, but the Jesson Kingdom was still too far away, so Jiangchen couldn't use the map to travel there. Jiangchen's eyes scoured the map as he looked at all of the nearby kingdoms in the area around Mercenary City. For a brief moment, his eyes looked back to Mercenary City and gave a small sigh before looking elsewhere. He knew that he had more than enough strength to help the Jesson Kingdom in its time of need, but because he had no idea on the current circumstances of the kingdom, he needed to get back there as soon as possible. If he waited too long, then the Jesson Kingdom would be overrun and his family exterminated. To Jiangchen, the latter was something he was not willing to see nor experience. So, his only goal was to find a space gate and then use it to travel to the Jesson Kingdom in the fastest way possible. Suddenly, the kingdom, Qinhuang, popped up in Jiangchen's eyes. Taking a look, Jiangchen's eyes began to sparkle as he quickly thought back to the friend he made, Qinji, during the gathering of the mercenaries. His hands began to shake as he took out the piece of jade from his space ring. On the jade piece, there was the single word for Qin engraved on it. This was the gift that Qinji had given to him before the two had parted. Looking at the considerably expensive piece of jade in his hands, Jiangchen began to hum as he thought to himself, Qinji has a ruler armament and a barrier protecting him. That would mean the Qinhuang Kingdom is quite strong. Perhaps they would have a space gate. Jiangchen suddenly came to a stop in midair as he hesitated. With a final conclusion, he started to fly toward the Qinhuang Kingdom. Whether or not the kingdom had a space gate, he would give it a try. The Qinhuang Kingdom was only 100,000 meters north of Mercenary City, making the distance from where he was to the kingdom approximately 120,000 kilometers. If he wanted to go there, it would take a considerable amount of time. Using the wind elements in the world to help speed him up, Jiangchen began to travel at a pace that was relatively slower than the time when he had used the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and the Illusionary Flash combined. However, it still took him 2 hours in order to travel 1,500 kilometers. In this manner, 24 hours would be enough for him to travel nearly 20,000 kilometers. In 7 days, Jian Shen had finally arrived at the border of the Qinhuang kingdom. These 7 days had been taxing for Jian Shen. He had very few breaks, and the tiger cub constantly ate the heavenly resources before falling asleep right after. However, the tiger cub was growing at a decent speed now. His body was already a meter long and already weighed close to 50 kilograms. This, however, made holding the cub to his chest very difficult. Moreover, the cub was already at the level of a Class 2 magical beast. Because of the cub's innate nature of being a heavenly tiger god, it could constantly devour the heavenly resources without a problem, unlike humans who used monster cores. After a while, a human would come across troubles that would shake their foundation and bring about major damages if they did not regulate their usage of monster cores, but this tiger did not have such a limitation. In front of him, there was a 100-meter-tall ancient wall that stretched beyond the lands like a long dragon, giving anyone the impression that they were looking at a mountain range instead. On top of the ancient gates was a gigantic board that said 3 words, Qinhuang Kingdom. This was the stronghold of the Qinhuang Kingdom. As he drew closer, the originally quiet stronghold began to buzz with activity. Floating 1,000 meters high in the air, he could see the ant-like people down below flowing in and out of the stronghold, trading their wares. Jian Shen didn't bother with going through the gates and instead flew overhead without bothering to hide himself either. Although his movements had not gone unnoticed by several soldiers, the soldiers did nothing to stop him. Instead, they continued to watch him fly by with envious looks. Heaven Saint Masters were individuals that commanded this privilege of being able to go as they pleased without being stopped. The Qinhuang kingdom was extraordinarily large, 4 or 5 times larger than the Jessan kingdom. After traveling for another 10,000 kilometers, he finally reached the capital city, Qinhuang City. This was a king's city, a city that was second in rank compared to 7 of the continent's capital cities, but its grandeur was great nonetheless. Flying into Qinhuang City, he drew close to the palace and descended onto the ground while holding the tiger cub. Together, the two continued inside. "Halt, what are you doing?" Several guards at the great Saint Master level instantly moved forward to obstruct Jian Shen's path. Jian Shen flashed the jade piece and spoke, "I am looking for Qin Ji." "Outrageous, just how dare you call the third prince so casually?" One of the rear guards instantly rebuked. "Third prince?" At this, Jian Shen's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea that Qin Ji held such an illustrious position within the kingdom. When one of the vanguards heard Jian Shen call out Qin Ji's name, his eyes narrowed dangerously. However, when he saw Jian Shen hold up the jade piece, he started with a cry, "That is the Qinhuang jade given from His Majesty." At this, the guard that had cursed out from the back instantly clutched at his neck and retreated without a sound. "My lord, if you would allow me to inspect the jade piece." The vanguard head spoke out courteously, a 180-degree shift from just a moment ago. Without any complaints, Jian Shen handed over the jade piece to the guard. That guard accepted it with a polite manner and began to carefully turn and rotate the piece in order to inspect it. After ensuring that it was authentic, he gave it back and spoke, "My lord, if you could give us your name, we will report it to the third prince at once." "Jian Shen." "Lord Jian Shen, please wait a moment." The guard saluted as he called out for a person to come close. Whispering an order into his ear, he sent the man to go running into the palace straight away. The time Jian Shen had spent waiting was not short. After an hour of waiting, a luxuriously dressed youth came walking out of the palace in a hurry. Right behind him were 2 beautiful-looking women. "We greet the third prince." When the youth came out, the dozen great Saint Master guards all immediately knelt down and cupped their hands in greeting. This youth was Qin Ji. All raised then. Qin Ji spoke calmly before looking toward Jian Shen. However, when he saw just how he looked, Qin Ji's face was surprised for a moment before laughing. "Brother Jian Shen, I had no idea that it was really you. You've really changed this time. Not only is your hair gone, but even your eyebrows and eyelashes too. Did you get roasted by a fire? I could barely recognize you." Hearing this, Jian Shen could only chuckle in embarrassment. The recent weeks have been quite troublesome, so I look rather pitiful right now. After exchanging several words, Qinji ushered Jianchen into the palace where a scrumptious feast was laid out in a palace hall made of gold and splendor for his welcome. During the feast, Jianchen and Qinji both talked joyously about many things as if they were good friends that had not met in years. Every so often, a great big laughter could be heard from one of the two. After the meal was eaten and the wine was drunk, Jianchen arrived at the heart of the matter. With a grim face, he asked, "Brother Qinji, I came to you today for your help on an important matter." Qinji had already known Jianchen was not the type of person to visit a temple without a cause, so he laughed, "Brother Jianchen, what is it that you need my help on? If I can do it, then I, Qinji, will not hesitate to do so." With an even more serious expression, he spoke, "Brother Qinji, I am in dire need of a space gate. Would you know whether the Qinhuang kingdom has one or knows the location of one?" For a moment, Qinji stared blankly, but he quickly began to laugh in relief, and here I thought it was something major. "Brother Jianchen, you were correct in coming to the Qinhuang kingdom for a space gate. Aside from Mercenary City, Qinhuang City is the only one to have a space gate within 100,000 kilometers. Jianchen was overjoyed to hear this. "Brother Qinji, then I must ask of you, would I be able to have you help me use the space gate?" Continuing to laugh, Qinji replied, "Brother Jianchen, you needn't worry. Although the space gate within the Qinhuang kingdom isn't open for foreigners, there are always exceptions to everything. Just let me talk to my father, it shouldn't be a problem." "Is that so? Then I'd like to thank Brother Qinji." Jianchen looked relieved and exhilarated to hear that he would be able to use the space gate to return to the Jessen kingdom. Qinji placed another morsel of food from his chopsticks and began to chew with joy. Speaking with some food still in his mouth, Qinji spoke, "However, Brother Jianchen, I suggest you wait 3 days before using the space gate to leave." "Why is that?" Jianchen asked. "In 2 days of time, it will be my father's 50th birthday. That day will be extremely lively and many nobles from many clans will come to celebrate. As my friend, I hope that you would celebrate it with me." Chapter 391, Provocation. Jianchen hadn't any desire to decline Qinji's request, so he agreed to it quite enthusiastically. As a result, Jianchen came to live within the Qinhuang palace with the lifestyle of an immortal, but this was not the lifestyle that Jianchen was accustomed to. At night, he would sleep within one of the guest rooms with several armored guards and even some maids waiting outside. The first were to guard Jianchen while the latter were to serve him. Even when he walked around the palace, several guards and maids would follow from behind. If it weren't for the fact that Jianchen knew that all wealthy men had such a privileged life like this, he would have assumed that they were here to supervise him for any dangerous activity toward the palace. On the second day, Qinji had woken up Jianchen early in the morning before taking him on a stroll around the palace. On the stroll, he pointed out many of the different types of scenery within the place. Jianchen never brought the tiger cub with him since he didn't wish for the cub to be subjected to the eyes of a lord. So, to ensure that the cub was safe, he would feed it a large amount of heavenly resources and would wait for it to fall into a deep sleep before walking out. The palace was extraordinarily large, and even after walking for almost the entire day, they had only managed to travel 2/3 of it. Some of the remaining areas were forbidden to outsiders, however. In the meanwhile, Qinji had introduced Jianchen to many different lords and the daughters of the nobles. Their ages weren't all that too far away from the two, but whenever Qinji introduced Jianchen, he only said that Jianchen was a friend made from a personal friendship. Thus, the lords gave Jianchen contemptuous looks. Maintaining a look of resoluteness, Jianchen said nothing. However, the illustrious daughters of the nobles oftentimes gave him strange looks. Some of them even spoke to Jianchen with a friendly manner and exposed their intent to be friends clearly. However, this newfound popularity of Jianchen had earned the ire of even more nobles. The majority of them had already started to give Jianchen envious and heated looks. Straight after Qinji and Jianchen had split ways, many of the nobles had already ordered for someone to inquire about Jianchen's identity and background. In the end, Many of them couldn't help but sigh in relief as they heard that Jiangchen wasn't a part of any political power and was an unknown entity. In accordance to their guesses, even if Jiangchen had some type of background, the party behind him was far too inferior to be talked about in public. In the evening, Jiangchen had finished the daytime activities and returned to Qinji's palace to eat a meal. This was his personal abode and was suited with many different facilities for his every need. Just as Qinji and Jiangchen were enjoying their meal, an armored soldier suddenly came into the palace and knelt to the ground respectfully. A report for the third prince. Princess Qinhuang, Princess Qin Yubing and the Princess of Funan have arrived at the Flowing Clouds Palace. The Flowing Clouds Palace was the name of Qinji's palace. Hearing this, Qinji's eyebrows furrowed together as he muttered, "Strange, what are they up to?" Then, as if coming to a realization, he gave a meaningful look to Jiangchen and laughed, "Then, let them in." "Yes, third prince." The guard spoke before retreating outside. After the guard had left, Qinji toasted a cup with Jiangchen. "Brother Jiangchen, the relationship between the three of them and me is not anything significant. This is the first time they've come to my palace. It seems that it's because of you." Jiangchen cleaned off the wine cup with a bitter smile. "Brother Qinji, you speak so sarcastically." Widening his eyes, Qinji spoke sternly, "Sarcasm? I am not." "Jiangchen, if you don't believe me, then just wait and see." Very soon, 3 beautiful flower-like women walked into the palace. These 3 young princesses were the 3 princesses he had met in the Imperial palace during the day. Princess Qinhuang gave an unruly wink toward Qinji as she spoke. "Elder brother, Qinhuang has grown so much, and yet you're not welcoming me into your palace for the first time?" Laughing, Qinji spoke. "Welcome, welcome. How could I not welcome you? Sisters, Princess of Funan, please come sit and eat." Made another 3 sets of dinnerware. The 2 princesses and the Princess of Funan were all outspoken women, but their words were filled with noble auras and they spoke of their thanks to Qinji. As the 3 sat down, Qin Yubing cast a glance toward Jiangchen before speaking to Qinji. "Ah, elder brother, you haven't introduced your sister to your friend here. Your sister is very curious, just how did you two meet?" Giving a quick wink to Jiangchen, he laughed and explained, "There's no harm in telling you. Brother Jiangchen and I actually met at the gathering of the mercenaries. The 2 of us became close friends straight away. Furthermore, this brother of mine is actually the king of mercenaries." "Ah, so he is the Jiangchen who won first place at the gathering of the mercenaries." The 3 princesses looked on in shock. Their opinion of Jiangchen had changed drastically, their eyes shining strangely bright. Seeing how the princess's eyes were starting to sparkle, Jiangchen couldn't help but give a small smile before glaring at Qinji. Pretending to not have seen it, Qinji's lips curled into a small smile as he continued to eat the meal on the table with a relished gusto. "Wah, so you're really strong, Jiangchen. If you were able to become the first place ranker at the gathering of the mercenaries, then that means you're stronger than our elder brother. Come, Citoyen, toast you." The Princess of Funan immediately raised a glass as she spoke to Jiangchen with a chivalrous tone. Following Citoyen's example, Qinhuang and Qin Yubing both raised their glasses as well as they toasted Jiangchen. Unwilling to shirk away from this, Jiangchen stood up and held up his own glass in response to the 3 princess' kind words. Touching cups with the there, he was just about to bring it up to his own mouth before a loud cry came out from outside. "Lord Xiaohan, you can't go in. Without the permission of the 3rd prince, no one can enter the Flowing Clouds Palace. Lord Xiaohan, please don't make things difficult for us. Without the 3rd prince's permission, you cannot enter this place. Step aside." "Who do you think I am? Visiting the 3rd prince should warrant no notice." All of a sudden, a 25-year-old youth came bursting into the palace in a grandiose manner. He wore a magnificent cyan robe and his eyebrows were creased into a fierce state, giving everyone the idea that he was the type to treat all those under the heavens as someone to be scorned. As he entered, 2 more armored soldiers came running in as an attempt to block him. But because of the high status of the youth, the 2 soldiers didn't dare use violence in order to stop him. Third prince, please forgive us. The two soldiers cried out helplessly in forgiveness. Looking expressionlessly at the youth that had just ran in, he waved his hand at the two guards. You two may leave. Yes, third prince. The two cried out graciously before retreating away. Qinji looked at the youth hard and spoke. What business do you have for you to just barge into my flowing clouds palace? Laughing, Xiaohan cupped his hands in greeting. Third prince, tomorrow is His Majesty's 50th birthday. I came here today to discuss of tomorrow's gift to him. If I have disturbed you, then please forgive me for my transgressions. Looking to the side at Qinhuang, Qinhuang, and the princess of Funan, his expression grew flabbergasted as he cried, Ah, the two princesses and the princess of Funan are here too? How coincidental. Dear princesses, what might you three be doing here? Xiaohan looked at the 4 cups being raised in the air, but a sight like this didn't require an idiot to figure out the situation. Xiaohan's eyes held an undisguised amount of envy, but he managed to let out a smile. Dear princesses, could it be that you three are giving a toast to the third prince's friend? Qinhuang, Qinhuang, and the princess of Funan looked at him with a look of utter loathing as if they were all equally disgusted by him. Qinhuang didn't even spare him another glance and turned back to Jian Chen with the cup raised. Let us toast. Her voice was exceedingly gentle and would cause any male to feel happy to hear it. After her suggestion, Qinhuang and the princess of Funan raised their glasses up with a smile. At this sight, Xiaohan's fury burst with envy as he promptly shouted, This cannot do. 3 princesses worth their weight of gold and all of illustrious backgrounds drinking wine with a stranger? Have you lost your identity? Straight away, Qin Ji exploded with anger as well. His previously expressionless eyes grew icy cold as he thundered, Xiaohan, what is the meaning of your words? Could it be that a friend of I, Qin Ji, is not worthy of drinking with these 3 princesses? Giving an apologetic smile, he spoke with a moderate tone, Third prince, please quell your anger. What I said is nothing but the truth. These 3 princesses have such an illustrious background, and while the friend of the third prince is no ordinary status, he is neither anyone with any special relations. Thus, it is inappropriate for them to drink with him. Chapter 392, Using chopsticks as weapons. Xiaohan's words caused Qin Ji's face to instantly grow dangerous. But before he could say anything, Qinhuang spoke out toward Xiaohan with an icy glow. Xiaohan, whomever we drink with is of no concern to you. That's correct. Xiaohan, you are overstepping your boundaries. Whatever we wish to do has nothing to do with you. Qinhuang said. Xiaohan, you think too highly of yourself. If it were not for your grandfather, you wouldn't even be qualified to step within the Qinhuang palace. You think that you are amazing, or terrific even so that even elder brother is below your station? Your grandfather has wasted all those magical panaceas, but you are only a great saint master, what a waste. The princess of Funan lashed out verbally, not caring for Xiaohan's honor. Hearing this, Xiaohan's face began to grow darker and his eyes frosted over. Qinhuang and Qinhuang were both princesses of grace and beauty, women that he had constantly chased after. Once he had even announced his affection for the two, but he had been rejected without mercy. Xiaohan did not give up his pursuit because he believed that with his position within the Qinhuang kingdom, it was only a matter of time before he and one of the two would be engaged. Having his grandfather propose to His Majesty for this arranged marriage would not be too difficult. He had never thought that the 2 people he had always chased after would unexpectedly go with a stranger unknown to him and speak such unpleasant words for him to hear. To the boisterous noble, this was an unwashable insult. The princess of Funan had especially spoke words that were as sharp as a sword before piercing into his heart. It was a deep insult to him, causing him to grow speechless and pale. Seeing how offended Xiaohan was, Qin Ji began to smile in delight as he spoke. Xiaohan, right now my brother and the 3 princesses are eating a meal. I've already planned for my father's present, so there is no need to discuss it. You may leave. With that, Qin Ji looked outside, take Xiaohan back to his place. Immediately 2 maids came forward and courteously brought Xiaohan away from the palace. Lord Xiaohan, if you please. Xiao Han let out a violent snort of air as the anger within his heart combusted. All of his extreme anger and envy was forced straight upon Jian Chen's head and had already reached the highest point of anger. Good, good, good. Princess Funan, you say that I am not equal to the third prince. I, Xiao Han, recognize that. That is because compared to the heaven-gifted genius like the third prince, I am inferior, but let me ask you. Could that stranger right there be any more amazing? He has only his looks to fall upon. His status, his position, his power, where does he compare to against me? Xiao Han spoke, emphasizing each word. His anger and envy had already caused him to lose all reasoning. The Princess of Funan revealed a sneer as she looked at Xiao Han with scorn. Xiao Han, your position only came to be because of your grandfather and not your own strength. As for strength, she paused for a moment as her vibrant eyes turned to look at Jian Chen while ignoring Xiao Han. As for this man's strength, if you cannot compare to the third prince, then you cannot even hope to stand against Jian Chen. He is nothing. I won't believe that he is stronger than me. Xiao Han snorted in anger as he stared at Jian Chen vehemently. Kid, I, Xiao Han, challenge you. Do you dare to accept? Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together. This Xiao Han was not at all pleasant to talk to. At this moment, Qin Ji spoke. Xiao Han, the Princess of Funan speaks the truth. You are not an opponent for my brother, so save yourself the disgrace. You too take Lord Xiao Han back. Qin Ji spoke flatly toward the maids. He too did not have a favorable impression of Xiao Han and didn't bother to honor him. Yes, third prince. Lord Xiao Han, scram. The two maids tried to lead Xiao Han out of the palace, but he immediately pushed them aside and glared dangerously at Jian Chen. A strong amount of saint force began to form around his right hand before forming a giant broadsword before pointing the tip at Jian Chen. Do you dare accept? Xiao Han's provocation caused Qin Ji to explode with anger. Slamming the table, he exploded. Xiao Han, the Flowing Clouds Palace will not accept this behavior. If you continue this behavior, then don't blame Qin Ji for not sparing your face. Xiao Han had already lost his reasoning to his anger, so the third prince's words had gone in one ear and out the other. Pointing his sword at Jian Chen, he repeated, Do you dare accept? Impudence. Qin Ji's palm slammed on the table once more in anger as if he was about to prepare to deal with this himself. Jian Chen lifted his hand to stop Qin Ji as he stared at Xiao Han. Brother Qin Ji, if this brother here wishes to challenge me, then I will comply. Qin Ji hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Brother Jian Chen, then please do be lenient. Please be what? Teach him a good lesson. He annoys us every day to death almost. Qinhuang spoke in discontent. That's right, I hate him. Qin Yubing had a look filled with disgust. Jian Chen looked at Xiao Han. Make your move then. Let's go outside. This palace is too small and I have no desire to destroy the third prince's palace. He snorted. No need, Jian Chen shook his head. I don't feel like moving. You may rest assured, we won't be breaking any part of this place. Jian Chen's casual attitude toward him caused Xiao Han's anger to explode 3 times over. How arrogant, I'll make sure you pay the price then. With that, he raised his giant saint weapon and charged straight toward Jian Chen. Qinhuang, Qin Yubing, and the Princess of Funan let out a small cry of alarm as they tried to move back to avoid the energy wave. With a snort, Jian Chen waved his hand. The chopstick from the table began to float up into the air with an azure and violet glow to it before shooting straight toward Xiao Han. Ah! Following a miserable cry of pain, the chopstick burrowed its way into Xiao Han's right arm to where the bone was, rendering mobility in it impossible. Wah, Jian Chen is quite amazing, too amazing, just too amazing. Jian Chen, how strong are you if you could use a single chopstick to beat a great saint master? Jian Chen, you absolutely must teach me. The 3 princesses all clapped their hands in adoration of Jian Chen, their eyes were already seeing stars. Seeing the wound on Xiao Han's body, Qin Ji had let out a sigh in relief. This was the man that the Shi family and the Jie clan had their young lords killed by. Because of that, he was worried that Jian Chen would have taken Xiao Han's life in a fit of anger. Take Xiao Han to treat his wounds. Qin Ji waved his hand for the two maids to take him. Xiao Han was unable to take the pain in his arm and could only stare poisonously at Jian Chen. Without another look back, he walked out from the palace. Even his honor would not allow him to stay here. After Xiao Han had left, Jian Chen looked to Qin Ji. Brother Qin Ji, just who is this Xiao Han? Qin Ji sat back down. Xiao Han's position is truly quite unique. Within the palace, there are very few that are equal to the stature of the princes. His grandfather is the imperial tutor and has an illustrious position as a result. His grandfather's status could rival even my father's. Xiao Han's father was also the imperial army's captain 5 years ago. One time when my father had been a target of a raid, it was Xiao Han's father who had taken the blow for an attempt on his life, causing his death. Because of this, my father has come to love Xiao Han dearly, causing his status to rise up to the rank of a prince. So that's the story. What realm has Xiao Han's grandfather reached? Jian Chen asked. Heaven Saint Master. He is a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Qin Ji spoke seriously. A genius that has reached the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master realm. Jian Chen muttered with a gentle smile. After the meal, the 3 princesses finally parted paths with Jian Chen, allowing him to return to his own place to rest. Sitting on top of the bed to think, he knew that it would be the celebration of His Majesty's birthday. He didn't know just what type of present to give to a king. Aside from a heaven-tier battle skill, heavenly resources, and a Class 6 monster core, Jian Chen had essentially nothing to give. The heaven-tier battle skill was definitely not an item to be gifted, and a Class 6 monster core would not be an item worthy of being gifted to a king of the Qinhuang kingdom. At this moment, a light went off in Jian Chen's mind as his hand blurred, causing a small pill to appear in his hand. This was the second Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill given to him by Elder Shou. He wasn't too willing to part with it just yet, so he began to debate on what to do. But this Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill is the only item I could give. Jian Chen muttered. His Radiant Saint Force was far away from being equal to a Class 8 Radiant Saint Force. Plus, with his controlling method, it would be impossible for him to mass-produce them anyways. Chapter 393, Birthday Present. The next day, the birthday of the Qinhuang Kingdom's king had officially begun. Jian Chen was woken up early by Qin Ji, and the two left together to congratulate him. The palace was especially lively today. Many influential lords and nobles came to personally congratulate the king on this happy occasion. All sorts of political leaders and major powers came, and in short, everyone was of some importance. The Qinhuang kingdom held a lot of power and was second only to the 3 great empires. Within the continent, the Qinhuang kingdom was already considered one of the highest powers. Thus, every single territory within the kingdom and even the subsiding powers bordering the kingdom had sent men with gifts in order to celebrate this happy occasion. If it were not a lord or princess, it was a prime minister that came. Even several imperial advisors had come to pay their respects. Directly walking toward the main palace hall, Jian Chen and Qin Ji both saw well over 1,000 people standing around. Each one wore gorgeous robes or were figures that were well known throughout the kingdom. A wave of maids could be seen walking around the place with small platters of food in order to serve the guests. We greet the 3rd prince. We greet the 3rd prince. Upon seeing Qin Ji arrive, many of the people there began to cup their hands in salute with extremely respectful greetings. Greeting them all with a kind smile, Qin Ji responded amiably without any sense of arrogance. Jian Chen followed behind Qin Ji silently. He was perfectly content not being in the limelight and did not wish for the spotlight to be put onto him. The nobles within the palace naturally paid very little attention to him. The vast majority only believed that Jian Chen was an attendant to Qin Ji and didn't spare him a second glance. The other part of the crowd took a neutral stance, but some noticed that Jian Chen was not any ordinary person. He was neither servile or overbearing in nature and carried himself with a graceful manner. Despite his age, he walked with a steady step that even a mountain could not attest to. Some of the stronger men in the room could even tell there was a strong pressure coming from him, causing them to look on in shock. Strange, why is it that I feel as if I've seen that man walking behind the third prince before? Just where did this feeling come from? One of the more richly dressed men stared suspiciously at Jian Chen as he muttered to himself. He was not the only person to have this hunch. Several other men within the palace had this same exact suspicion. They felt that he was a stranger, but they still couldn't shake off this feeling. Brother Jian Chen, feel free to go rest somewhere, I still have several people to greet. Qin Ji spoke apologetically toward Jian Chen. Today was the 50th birthday of his father, so the king could not greet any of the people himself. However, these men were all high-ranking people, some from the surrounding kingdoms. They couldn't be received by just anyone, so the children would have to take up the mantle. Even this was considered to be a good opportunity for the prince to get to know people. It was with that excuse that they could make a foundation for political support when the time came to fight for the throne. Jian Chen was neither a child nor an ignorant farmer from the thatched villages. He understood clearly just how important this gathering was for Qin Ji and did not argue. Taking a small snack to eat, he began to stroll to the closest corner of the room before enjoying the delicious tasting pastries. Just then, a cyan-robed middle-aged man sat down right next to Jian Chen. Nodding with a smile toward the eating Jian Chen, he spoke, "Fellow brother, have we seen each other somewhere before?" Jian Chen lifted his head to look at the man. Seeing that the man was unfamiliar to him, he shook his head, "You must be mistaken. Perhaps I look like someone else?" Still skeptical, the man nodded his head, "Perhaps so. My name is Qinhuang, what might your name be?" Jian Chen laughed, "This one is just a nobody and not even a member of the Qinhuang kingdom. My name won't be recognizable by sire even if this one speaks of it." Jian Chen finished off the pastry and left to go get a new one. After Jian Chen had left, Qinhuang narrowed his eyes in doubt, "An unknown nobody? Is that really the truth? Why do I feel that I've seen you from somewhere?" Even with his mutterings, he had been unable to think of an answer, so Qinhuang had no other choice but to leave as well. "His Majesty the King has arrived." At that moment, a long drawn-out voice could be heard announcing the arrival of the king. The noise within the palace instantly died out as everyone turned to look in the direction the cry came from. Everyone could see a golden, purple dragon-robed middle-aged man walking into the palace with an intimidating air. Right behind him was a single elder with a crane-styled hairdo. The king was turning 50 years old, but his appearance made him look as if he was 40 instead. He was smiling widely with eyes that flickered with vigor and wisdom. The Qinhuang kingdom's king had 12 children. 7 of them were princes and the other 5 were princesses. The eldest was already 30 years old and the youngest was only 6. At this moment, those 12 children were walking right behind him. "Greet His Majesty and wish him a long life and glory to the Qinhuang kingdom." The entire palace began to speak out the words, "Long live and 1,000 years." Within the Tianyuan continent, these were the highest words of celebration that generally only the nobility of countries could hear. That was because 1,000 years was the lifespan of a heaven saint master. Saint rulers and saint kings weren't even able to live past 10,000 years and were generally within the thousands. Afterward, everyone began to give the gifts they had prepared. The vast majority of the items were all vastly valuable, some of them were even beyond the scope of what money could be. Apart from this, there was plenty of antique pottery and vases from several people as well as plenty of heavenly resources that were aged well over 1,000 years. After the majority of the men had presented their gifts, Jian Chen came walking forward with a purple and gold box. Striding forward, he presented it to the king with a smile. "There is a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill within this box. I present this to His Majesty in congratulations on his birthday." Jian Chen spoke succinctly without any flowery words. "A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill? I've heard only a 7th class Radiant Saint Master would be able to produce such a pill. It is a pill that is fully deserving of being called a true healing Catholicon. Not only can it purify any venom, but it could even rescue a person from the jaws of death." A Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill can be rarely seen within the entire continent. This would make even hermits drool at the mouth to have such a life-saving treasure. Upon hearing the words, Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill, the entire palace began to burst into commotion and admiration at this item. They all looked at the purple and golden box within Jian Chen's hands. Each one believed that such a high-leveled Radiant Spirit Pill had gone extinct since the only Radiant Saint Masters capable of making one were as rare as a phoenix feather. Furthermore, creating just one of these would require a tremendous amount of energy from them. The Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill had moved even the king. If he wanted to obtain some sort of heavenly resource or any other priceless treasure, it was not at all difficult for him. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill was a different matter. That was because items that could save one's life were far too priceless to be obtained. Following a stare from the king, a white-robed elder immediately came forth from the crowd. Taking the box from Jian Chen's hands, he took out the bottle from within and then began to inspect the thumb-sized pill from it. This elder was a Radiant Saint Master that would be able to tell how rich the Radiant Saint force was within the pill. After making sure he wasn't wrong, the elder's face lit up in delight as he carefully put the pill back into the box and cupped his hands to the king. "Your Majesty, this is truly a Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill." The elder's voice held an emotional tone to it since he knew just how rare it was to see such a high-leveled pill. Standing right behind the king, Qin Ji sent an appreciative glance to Jian Chen. Even he knew just how priceless a Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill was. For Jian Chen to unexpectedly gift such a pill to the king, the meaning would be loud and clear, allowing Qin Ji to feel happy. Even the other people standing by the king's side began to change their opinion of Jian Chen by smiling and nodding. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit Pill couldn't be given by just anyone. This action from Jian Chen had inadvertently solidified his status among everyone in the crowd. Hearing the confirmation from the elder, the king immediately began to laugh as he regarded Jian Chen in a new light. "Remarkable brother, it only takes one look to know that you are a giant among the men here. I admit to knowing no noble that would relinquish such a priceless gift, but I am truly grateful. Father, he is called Jian Chen, a friend I have made from the outside." Before Jian Chen could even say anything, Qin Ji spoke out respectfully to his father. As soon as Qin Ji spoke, several other men began to cry out. "Jian Chen. He's Jian Chen, it's no wonder I thought he looked familiar. Could he be that very same Jian Chen who became the king of mercenaries at the last gathering of the mercenaries? His strength was on par with a Heaven Saint Master, it's no wonder I felt that there was something to him. I've got it. He's that Jian Chen who became the king of mercenaries. I was there for the event, so no wonder I had thought he was familiar looking. It's because his hair is nearly gone so that I was unable to recognize him. Even his eyelashes are gone." Chapter 394, Attacks that influence even the nobility. Hearing the chatter regarding Jian Chen, the influential officials all had flabbergasted expressions on their faces as they stared at Jian Chen one by one in disbelief. Everyone knew that the king of mercenaries was named Jian Chen, but those who had personally seen what Jian Chen had looked like were a small amount. No one could have imagined that Jian Chen was actually very young, even younger than the third prince. In simple math, Jian Chen spent less time cultivating than the third prince, but he was even stronger than him. This led everyone to believe that Jian Chen was a genius of unsurpassed prowess. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom boomed with laughter as he looked at Jian Chen with surprise. "Good. Very good. I did not judge you wrongly then. Jian Chen, you are truly a giant among men if you were able to become the king of mercenaries at such a young age. Your future has no limits, and my son will benefit greatly from being acquainted with you." Xiao Han stood within the crowd of people with a look of utter fury at Jian Chen. Biting his lip, he muttered angrily under his breath, "I didn't think you would be that nonsensical king of mercenaries. Humph, it doesn't matter who you are, Xiao Han, will not let you off easily." Hearing the mutters of Xiao Han, a cyan-robed middle-aged man asked, "Xiao Han, could this be the one that humiliated and injured you yesterday?" "Correct, Uncle Mujaya, you must help me teach him a lesson. Otherwise, this is something I will never be able to swallow." Xiao Han spoke. Mu Jiaye was an apprentice to his grandfather and was close to him. Mu Jiaye's eyebrows creased together as he thought, I'm afraid it won't be easy. I had no idea that he would be the king of mercenaries. Although I do not know of his strength, he surely has to be stronger than the third prince by a good amount. Furthermore, he has earned the favor His Majesty. If I were to act against him, I would earn the ire of His Majesty in return. Uncle Mu Jiaye, he is only so old. Even if the third prince is no match to him, it doesn't mean that Jian Chen may have used some sort of way to scrape out an unexpected success to become the king of mercenaries. You could challenge him in public and then humiliate him. As for His Majesty, I will naturally let my grandfather take care of that. Xiao Han spoke. Nodding his head slightly, Mu Jiaye spoke, Fine, I was wanting to test his strength anyways. I'd like to see just how strong the rumors say the king of mercenaries is. After knowing that Jian Chen was the king of mercenaries, the king's attitude toward him was far more friendly. On the contrast, when the other princes had heard that Jian Chen was the friend of the third prince, they had all contorted with annoyance. Only 2 of the younger princes had been able to keep their cool as if the matter had nothing to do with them. Jian Chen and the king managed to exchange several more words before returning to the crowd. However, at this moment, every single noble and major powers had begun to treat Jian Chen vastly different from before. Charging at him, each one of them tried to get within Jian Chen's good graces. That was because in the past, every single king of the mercenaries had been at the very least a heaven saint master. At the highest, they had been able to make the breakthrough to become a saint ruler. When it came to these people, Jian Chen only politely responded to them without any deeper meaning to his words. Suddenly, a grand voice could be heard reverberating through the halls, causing all of the noise in the hall to stop instantly. Your Majesty, our Qinhuang kingdom was founded by the military since the ancient past and defended our country with our military might. Today is the birthday of His Majesty, but why is there a shortage of martial might? This humble servant's hand itches and wishes to compare notes with the king of mercenaries, Jian Chen. At the same time, I wish to use this show of martial prowess to be the gift to His Majesty. Your Majesty, if you could please allow this. Everyone's head began to turn as they looked at a cyan-robed man kneel to the ground as he spoke respectfully to the king. Hearing this, the king had a faint smile as he introduced Jian Chen to him. Jian Chen, this is the Imperial Army Captain, Mu Jiaye. The king had neither denied nor accepted Mu Jiaye's request and instead gave the right to Jian Chen. In the end, he too wanted to see just how strong Jian Chen was. Laughing, Jian Chen strode forward and cupped his hands. If Captain Mu Jiaye wishes to compare notes with this one and put on a show for the king, then let us make this a great present to the king. Laughing joyously, the king spoke, Very well. If this is your answer, then let us all cheer you both on. With that, the king and an elder walked out of the halls with the entire crowd following after them. Within a large open space, everyone gathered around to watch Jian Chen and Mu Jiaye fight and were in an extremely jubilant mood. A fight between the Imperial Army captain and the king of mercenaries would definitely be a glorious spectacle. And in everyone's heart, they had wished to see just who would be the winner of the two. Only a few men had seen the king of mercenaries fight and so they had a profound smile on their faces as they watched. Mu Jiaye held his cyan-colored pike in his hands as he stared at Jian Chen fixedly. Although Jian Chen was quite young, being the king of mercenaries did not give Mu Jiaye the luxury of underestimating him. Jian Chen stood 30 meters away with a smile. Staring at the captain, he spoke, Captain Mu Jiaye, if you would please start it off. Seeing how Jian Chen had not yet taken out his saint weapon to fight, Mu Jiaye's eyebrows creased together with a small glint of fury. In his eyes, seeing Jian Chen barehanded was an insult to him. Casting a cold glare and a snort, his legs stamped across the ground as he flew toward Jian Chen. At the same time, the pike in his hands began to glow with the wind-attributed saint force as he thrust it forward. Jian Chen's face had a slight smile as his right leg stamped on the ground. A thumb-sized stone suddenly shot up before being grabbed by Jian Chen with ease. His hand shook for a moment before the pebble then began to glow with an azure and violet light. The pebble shot straight toward the incoming Wuji. Ding! A crisp sound could be heard as the thumb-sized stone collided against the tip of Wuji's pike. Following the inconceivably strong impact, Wuji's arm and pike began to tremble from the force. Looking greatly shocked, the force of the blow had caused Wuji to stop for a moment before staggering backward several steps. Both of the hands that were carrying the pike were shaking violently and a small amount of blood could be seen from the web of his hand. Turning pale with fright, Wuji turned his head to look at Jiangchen. Despite all of his strength, a pebble thrown by Jiangchen had been able to force him back. This was far too much for Wuji to accept. Seeing how a single stone thrown by Jiangchen had caused Wuji's hand to bleed, the spectators had gone into an uproar. Each one looked on in disbelief. This display of strength had been nearly as great on their hearts as it was for Wuji. Could this be a battle skill of Jiangchen's? Some people began to ask. Even the king sighed in admiration. He looked at Jiangchen in disbelief for a moment before turning to give a look to the elder beside him. A single pebble had been enough for the captain of the Imperial army to stagger backward. This was more than enough to let the king know that Jiangchen's strength was far stronger than he initially thought. An Earth Saint Master would not be enough to gauge Jiangchen's true strength, so he planned on bringing out a stronger person to do so instead. The elder standing next to the king nodded before walking out. Jiangchen, allow this old man to try. Before giving Jiangchen any option, the elder transformed into a blurry image as he charged toward Jiangchen. Jiangchen's lips curled up with a faint smile as he pointed outward with a finger, causing an azure and violet sword chi to shoot toward the elder. Knowing that Jiangchen was exceedingly strong, he didn't dare underestimate him. Forming a fist, he lashed out against the sword chi with a rippling amount of fire saint force. The sword chi was scattered apart by the elder, but there was an eye-catching wound left on top of the elder's hand. Looking at the wound on his hand, the elder's face grew dim. Swiping at the air, the fire element within the world began to congregate around his hand before instantaneously forming a giant sword of fire. At this sight, Jiangchen revealed a sneer before he raised his right hand as well. The fire elements in the world began to gather in his right hand at a faster rate than the elder and formed a giant sword of fire. No matter if it was color or by temperature, Jiangchen's sword seemed much stronger than the elder's. He has control of the energy of the world. How surprising is that? This is the magical power of controlling the energy of the world. Could he have reached the Heaven Saint Master realm? Jiangchen's act of controlling the energy of the world had caused everyone to turn pale with fright. At this moment, everyone had truly believed that Jiangchen was many times stronger than Wuji. Even the lords and leaders had their eyes wide open as they looked at Jiangchen in silent disbelief. A Heaven Saint Master wasn't a new sight to them. However, a Heaven Saint Master this young was something they had never heard of before. How is this possible? Jiangchen has made the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master? Even Qin Ji had a look of surprise as he muttered to himself. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom let out a breath of air as he slowly calmed his nerves. At this moment, he could feel his heart beating rapidly at this sight. A 20-something-year-old Heaven Saint Master would surely ripple across the Tianyuan continent if news were to get out. Is he truly as young as he looks? The Qinhuang kingdom's king spoke with some doubt. Chapter 395, Midair Showdown. When the elder saw Jiangchen form a sword seemingly out of mid-air, his face instantly blanched in shock. But without pause, he condensed his own fire-red great sword and went at Jiangchen to try and slash him. When the elder swung out, so did Jiangchen. Waving his right hand, the sword instantly shot toward the elder. Bang! When both fire-red swords collided against each other, the two swords suddenly exploded with energy, causing an explosive bang to be heard as the entire sky washed over with flames. All around the two combatants, balls of fire could be seen flying everywhere at high speeds and high temperature. Run! Get back! Protect His Majesty! The surrounding spectators instantly spread out as they flew backward, while at the same time, saint force of every color appeared to form a protective armor for themselves and anyone of major importance. Seeing the sudden spread of the fire, even the king of the Qinhuang kingdom was surprised. But a white figure suddenly shot towards him as a cyan-colored man brought both the king and himself into the air by using his wind-attributed saint force. With a grab of the king's shoulder, the two of them flew away from the fire. Movement could be seen coming from everywhere as an earth saint master began to spread out his saint force all over the palace. Several armored soldiers immediately flew forward in a hurried manner to form a protective line. At the same time, four elders and two middle-aged men strode forward from the crowd and circled around the ring of fire. Raising their hands, each one used a fierce blast of wind to curb and control the fire. The sea of flames had already concealed both Jian Chen and the elder he was fighting, but even within the flames, their movements were not hindered in the slightest. Just as the flames sent flying back at them from the 6 men earlier, it was suddenly stopped by an invisible force just 1 meter away. "Allow this old man to fight you from above." The elder spoke as he flew 500 meters up into the air, transforming into a speck the size of an ant. The faint element of fire could be seen enveloping his entire body. Not willing to admit defeat, Jian Chen began to use the wind element in the world and gathered it around his body using his mind. Flying straight into the air, he quickly got within 100 meters of the floating elder. "What? Why, you can control the wind element as well?" The elder spoke thunderstruck as he looked at the wind swivel around Jian Chen's body. The cyan-colored light surrounding Jian Chen's body had not gone unnoticed by the audience below. Each one of them cried out in shock, but not as loud as the several hidden heaven saint masters within the crowd. It was almost as if they had seen a monster as their faces contorted in shock. How is this possible? He was clearly a fire-attributed saint force cultivator. Just how is he using the wind attribute? Could he be a wind-attributed saint force user instead of a fire-attributed saint force user? Impossible. There has never been anyone being able to use 2 different elements. He must be using some sort of strange method. Jian Chen, could it be that you are able to control both the fire and wind element? The elder questioned in astonishment. Smiling, Jian Chen replied honestly, "Correct, I am truly able to control both the fire and wind element." "No, that's not possible. Just how could you control 2 elements? There has never been a single person who could do the same before on the continent." The man cried out. "There has never been anything that cannot be done. There are still many profound mysteries to the world, all that we know are merely the ones we have stepped into and understood." Although seeing Jian Chen take control of 2 elements in the world was extremely surprising, the elder calmed himself down quickly. "You speak correctly, there are still many things unknown to us in the world. It seems this old man has forgotten himself." Pausing his breath, the fire sword appeared in his hand once more. "Today, I shall find out for myself just how strong a wielder of 2 elements is." Smiling, Jian Chen raised both of his hands. Immediately, all of the pebbles within the nearby pond began to fly up as if a strange force was pulling it. Breaking through the water, the pebbles all floated around Jian Chen's body ominously. What is the meaning of this? How did the stones suddenly fly up into the air? What power is this? How is he doing it? At this even stranger sight, everyone could only gasp in surprise. Behind 2 heaven saint master guards, the Qinhuang kingdom king tilted his head to the sky. "This Jian Chen is truly beyond what I imagined. At such a young age, he has reached the heaven saint master realm. A genius like this comes only once every 1,000 years. One of the heaven saint masters looked surprised at that. Why stop at 1,000 years? A talent like his comes every 10,000 years. If his skill grows without any complication, he will be a saint ruler at the very least. Becoming a saint king would be of no problem to him." Hearing this, the king paused in surprise. Even the princes standing behind the king were frightened at this. Struggling to maintain their composure, they looked at Qin Ji with a mixture of admiration and jealousy. As for Qin Ji, he had personally seen Jian Chen's amazing prowess with his own eyes before. His mind had already thought of Jian Chen to be stronger than what his own words could say. By now, the heaven saint master had thrown away all notions of belittling Jian Chen. Mustering all of his strength, the flames on his sword had begun to evaporate even the air around it. Jianghu floated in midair as steady as a mountain as the wind blew past his figure ferociously. Both of his hands had already formed a fist right in front of his chest as the pebbles floating around him began to meld into the form of a sword that radiated with azure and violet sword chi. Chapter 396, Imperial Protector, Watch My Sword. The elder shouted as he brought the giant sword down toward Jianghu with an inferno replacing the blade. Jianghu's eyes flashed with a tint of the azure and violet shades of color. Right in front of him, the giant sword made from pebbles began to glow even brighter with the same color before shooting straight toward the elder. Bang! Another loud explosion could be heard as the elder's giant sword and the sword made from the pebbles clashed against each other. The flame-like essence from the elder's sword began to slough off in a substantial amount, each piece transforming into shooting stars that spread out in every direction before exploding like a firework would. The attack of the elder had caused some of the pebbles to be crushed into dust, but the remaining part of the sword continued its momentum and flew straight for the elder. With this blocking his forward momentum, the elder suddenly came to a stop as he heard the ear-whistling sound of the sword continue to fly. Staring seriously, he brandished his own sword and slashed out 3 more times with the flame sword, leaving behind an amazing streak of fire from its path as it struck against the pebbles. Ordinarily, the pebbles flying straight for the elder would have been so weak that they would have disintegrated into dust. However, because of the azure and violet sword chi, the pebbles had been hardened beyond their normal durability. So when they crashed against the elder's sword, several explosions could be heard from the resulting strikes. By now, the elder's body was like the flame and the pebbles the moths. Under Jianghu's control, the pebbles struck at the elder in every direction possible. Just what is this devilish power? The elder thought to himself. His entire body was already covered with the fire-attributed Saint Force as he continued to swat the pebbles away while trying to find a way out. It was not like he had no desire to strike at Jianghu, but the azure and violet sword chi surrounding the pebbles reinforced them so much that it was just too much for him to deal with. Even with the Saint Force covering his body, it was hard to defend against the strikes. With the constant barrage, just moving was difficult enough. Clenching both hands in midair, all of the nearby fire elements in the world suddenly congregated within Jianghu's hands. In a flash, they transformed to become 2 swords with fire as the blade. Right as they formed, they transformed into a single streak of fire as it shot toward the elder with blinding speed and a fiery heat. The heat had been so intense that the surrounding air had turned pink from the distortion. Staring seriously at the 2 blades shooting at him, the elder brought his own sword up and slammed down on the both of them. Once more, flames burst out from the explosion and plumes of fire washed over the sky like a series of fireworks. The entire sky was replaced with a sea of flames as they spread from the elder. At this moment, the temperature in the surrounding area had already scaled up to a degree where even the king and the spectators felt as if they were in a steamer basket and were being steamed alive. Jianghu's eyes continued to glow resplendently with a divine glow as the wind began to pick up in the area as if a howling storm was approaching. The sounds were like the screams of ghosts and blew the flames that were flying toward Jianghu back toward the elder's position. In an instant, the elder was concealed by the flames. Jianghu knew all too well that a flame of this magnitude would do nothing to a Heaven Saint Masterclass expert. At best, the elder would be worse for wear, but nothing more. Clutching at the sky once more, another sword of fire formed before flying at the elder's position. In an instant, the sword disappeared within the sea of flames without a trace. In the next, a fierce explosion could be heard as the flames suddenly blew apart. A white figure could be seen flying out from the fire. It was the elder. There was no serious damage that could be seen on his body, but he looked disheveled and his breathing was ragged while his clothes were already threatening to tear at the seams. In all, the elder no longer looked as refined and calm as he did before the fight. Floating in midair, the elder made no move to attack and instead continued to observe Jianghu. Jianghu made no move either. He knew that the elder was only testing for his strength and was not actually fighting to kill him in a do-or-die match. The flames quickly receded from the skies, causing the temperature to drop as well. At the same time, the elder had a strange look on his face as if hesitating before finally sighing, This old man admits his loss. Smiling, Jianchen cupped his hands together. Senior, you must be joking. This was only a test for my strength. Your true strength was not even shown completely. If you were to go all out, the conclusion would have been entirely different. The elder waved his hands dismissively. A loss is a loss. This old man is not someone that cannot accept a loss. Although I did not go all out, the amount of strength you're holding back would be stronger than mine still. Continuing to smile, Jianchen said no more in opposition to the man and slowly descended to the ground. The two landed on the ground at the same time in front of the crowd, but not a single voice could be heard. Not even the king nor the relatives of the king dared make a sound and instead chose to look at the handsome face of the youngster in front of them. Not only was Jianchen the youngest Heaven Saint Master they knew, but his strength was also beyond anyone's imagination. Even one of the Imperial advisors had admitted defeat. At this moment, everyone felt their own strength completely dominated by Jianchen. At the age of 20-something, he had already become a Heaven Saint Master. By the age of 50, or even 100, just what realm would he step into? Wah, Jianchen, you are truly amazing to be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master realm. Suddenly from the crowd, the Princess of Funan began to clap and speak her praise. Princess Qinhuang and Qin Yubing both looked at Jianchen with a strange look. Aside from those three, the other rich daughters of the other families all began to stare at Jianchen with a look of adoration and worship. Some of the daughters had even looked utterly entranced by him. Although Jianchen's hair had all been burnt away, he still retained his handsome looks. Combined with his young age, power as a Heaven Saint Master, and the honor given to him by the king, he was the Prince Charming to all of the rich daughters here. Ha ha ha, good, good, good. Jianchen's strength has opened everyone's eyes here. Jianchen, since you are the friend of Qin Ji, there is no need to see you as an outsider. If this king may, would I be so bold to call you a nephew? The king laughed merrily. Qin Ji had a gentle smile on his as he stood behind the king. At this moment, he could feel a strange feeling of happiness along with some shock. Jianchen being a Heaven Saint Master was something he was shocked by as well. That was because with Jianchen's actual age, this was a world-shaking revelation. Accepting the goodwill expressed by the king, Jianchen accepted this without hesitation. This was something that was more beneficial than harmful, so he cupped his hands together. It would be an honor for this one. Looking pleased, the king spoke with a great smile. Now that this battle is finished, let us all go back. Nephew Jianchen, let us return to the palace. With that, he led Jianchen with a friendly wave back toward the palace. On the way, he asked about Jianchen's well-being and constantly treated him well. Hidden within the crowd, Xiao Han could only look at Jianchen blankly. After a while, his entire face suddenly slackened. No way. There's no way. Just how is he a Heaven Saint Master? This has to be an illusion. Xiao Han sputtered as he muttered to himself. He was just in too much disbelief. At that moment, the still pale Mu Jia walked up to Xiao Han. Seeing the slackened face of surprise, Mu Jia sighed with some blame to his voice. You've offended a person, someone you cannot afford to offend. Even Imperial advisor Pu Ta wasn't his opponent. It seems that even your grandfather would not be able to win against him. This won't do, I must report this situation to your grandfather. Hearing this, Xiao Han's face blanched as he pulled on Mu Jia's arm hopefully. Uncle Mu Jia, do you think grandfather will try and get justice for me? Hearing this, Mu Jia whipped around to look at Xiao Han fiercely. How could you be so muddle-headed? Don't bring up this again and be careful of what you say. Jianchen is a Heaven Saint Master with unparalleled skill. He has curried favor with His Majesty and wouldn't be threatened by your grandfather at all. If you don't know what it means to repent, then even your grandfather will be hurt by this. Turning white, Xiao Han asked with a trembling voice, Uncle Mu Jia, what do you think I should do then? Sighing, Mu Jia spoke, you should go apologize to Jianchen. I must report this matter to your grandfather. By the end, I hope we transform this major problem into no problem. Quickly, everyone returned to the previous palace hall. The king led Jian Chen to the front before sitting on the imperial throne. Ordering the maid to bring a luxurious chair for Jian Chen to sit on, he began to treat him as if Jian Chen was a treasured son. This conduct toward Jian Chen had not gone unnoticed by the other princes. Each one began to smile and express their goodwill toward him as if it was only right that Jian Chen should have been treated like this to begin with. Unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? Chapter 397, Status. Unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? As the king gave his decree, the entire hall descended into a quiet calm. Each one looked at the king in a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. An imperial protector and imperial advisor were two different ranks. An imperial protector was higher in power and authority than an imperial advisor. An imperial protector could mobilize the army at a whim and even order the imperial advisors to manage any affair. Another terrifying power that an imperial protector had was the ability to behead an incapable ruler or any incompetent official. This was to say that their power was even above that of the nobility of the kingdom. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom had seen what potential Jian Chen had, so he appointed him to be the imperial protector. The decree of the king not only stunned the audience, but even Qin Ji, who was standing next to him. There was a look of utter shock on his face and a blankness had entered his mind. Half a moment later, the silence was broken as a white-haired elder came forward with his hands cupped together. "Your Majesty, this cannot do. Jian Chen is deserving of a spot as an imperial advisor, but an imperial protector is not appropriate. Prime Minister Kirill speaks correctly. The title of an imperial protector is far too high for a decision to be made this quickly. It would be more proper for Jian Chen to take the title as an imperial advisor for now." Another elder spoke. "Your Majesty, the title of an imperial protector cannot be made too rashly. This should be talked with the entire imperial advisors or perhaps even some of the revered imperial protectors to see if he is qualified." Another simply dressed person spoke. This man exuded a large amount of air and was a general that commanded plenty of power himself. "Your Majesty," a countless stream of opposition could be heard from the audience. Although Jian Chen was a genius they had never seen before, the title of an imperial protector was truly far too great of a position. Many of the nobles were especially vocal. With Jian Chen's age, they didn't dare let him be an imperial protector. At the same time, there were also a large amount of supporters of the king. At that moment, 20 people suddenly appeared in the palace. The majority of them were elders, but some were middle-aged and 3 were 30-year-old women. These people quietly walked up to the back of the palace without a word or anyone noticing them. When the king saw the group of people standing behind the crowd, he revealed a small smile. "That's correct, the title of an imperial protector is not something a king could appoint. This power goes to the imperial advisors and 4 imperial protectors themselves." With that, the king stood up from his throne. "With that, I would like to invite the imperial advisors to investigate. Does Jian Chen have the ability to be one? I agree to appoint Jian Chen to be an imperial protector." One of the elders spoke out in agreement. Smiling, he cupped his hands together in salute to Jian Chen. "I pay my respects to the imperial protector." "Your Majesty," with just a few imperial advisors agreeing, "it will be hard to convince the crowd. If His Majesty wishes for Jian Chen to be an imperial protector, then all of us imperial advisors need to consent." An elder spoke. Smiling, the king replied, "Commander Shu speaks the truth. Now then, imperial advisors, what do you think? We all give our consent to allow Jian Chen to be an imperial protector." An elderly voice called out from the back, causing everyone to turn around. When the crowd saw just who these 20 people were, they all looked at them with shocked eyes and open mouths. Each one of these people held influential positions and were all imperial advisors in their own rights. At this current moment, all of the imperial advisors were already gathered here. The group of 20 Imperial advisors began to walk forward, the entire crowd splitting apart to form a road for them. In a quick moment, they arrived right in front of Jian Chen before everyone cupped their hands. "We pay our respects to the Imperial Protector." At this sight, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom began to laugh without holding back. On the contrary, the crowd continued to look on in shock as if trying to comprehend what had just happened. One of the Imperial advisors spoke out loud, "Everyone doesn't need to worry." The appointment of Jian Chen to become an Imperial Protector was also approved by the 4 Imperial Protectors as well. The 20 of us just recently made contact with those 4 before we gathered here. If anyone has any suspicions, they can go to any of the Imperial Protectors for proof. With that, the entire audience began to grow noisy once more. The Imperial advisors of the Qinhuang kingdom were all Heaven Saint Masters, so when they saluted Jian Chen, he was knocked in for a loop. At a loss for what to do, Jian Chen didn't know what to think. In no time at all, he had been inducted to become one of the Imperial Protectors of the Qinhuang kingdom. "Your Majesty, this one's experience is still quite lacking. I'm afraid that I may fail to please." Jian Chen bowed to the king. Laughing, the king replied, "Nephew Jian Chen, appointing you as the Imperial Protector is something that the 4 Imperial Protectors have consented to. With this king cannot make any decision." There was some hesitation on his face. Becoming an Imperial Protector for the Qinhuang kingdom was no small matter. However, because of how fast this situation had developed, Jian Chen had no time to figure the benefits and detriments and could not come to a resolution. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Chen's face, Qin Ji's own face had a minute amount of worry to it. He and Jian Chen had only a regular relationship for now, but he was absolutely willing to have Jian Chen be an Imperial Protector since it would be a tremendously good thing for him. But this expression from Qin Ji had gone unnoticed by Jian Chen since he was currently stuck in a dilemma. Although the title of an Imperial Protector was indeed high, but he didn't wish to be tied down by it. The entire palace began to grow in noise as everyone looked toward Jian Chen. Xiao Han on the other hand had gone as white as paper before shaking all over. The authority of an Imperial Protector far outstripped the powers of his grandfather. It could even be said his grandfather would be a subordinate to Jian Chen. Qin Ji's face grew more and more panicked as he feared that Jian Chen would not accept the title of an Imperial Protector. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and spoke, "Jian Chen, being an Imperial Protector of our Qinhuang kingdom means that you would be able to use the space gate of our kingdom without any limitations and our resources. Even your authority would be comparable to the king." Upon hearing the ability of being able to use the space gate, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat before he spoke, "Your Majesty, if I were to become an Imperial Protector, would I have to limit my movements?" "Of course not. Nephew Jian Chen, you will not be limited in your travels as our Imperial Protector. We only wish that in our moment of need, you will come to help us and to not work against us." The king smiled. With that, Jian Chen came to a conclusion. This was a deal that was almost all benefit with no detriment. With the Qinhuang kingdom's strength, the chance of it being in danger was practically nil. With that thought in mind, Jian Chen no longer hesitated and agreed to be an Imperial Protector. "We pay our respects to the Imperial Protector." After Jian Chen's consent, every single person within the audience began to swoop in to give their respects. The title of an Imperial Protector was extremely illustrious and was far more powerful than even the Lord and sometimes even the King of the kingdom. With at least half of the Imperial Protector's agreement, a noble could be removed from his position without even the king being able to overturn it or risk a large war. From this, it could be seen that an Imperial Protector was a powerful entity. Afterward, the nobles and the Imperial advisors began to congratulate and pull Jian Chen into their good graces. Although Jian Chen's young age had caused everyone to belittle him at first, his potential was not ignorable to anyone. His future was something no one would be able to predict, and even the 4 Imperial Protectors were astounded by him. Jian Chen becoming an Imperial Protector made Qin Ji extremely happy. His smile could illuminate the night and could not be masked. Jian Chen's appearance had truly taken the spotlight for the events of today. It was originally a day of celebration for the king's 50th birthday, but instead of the king being the main character, the great winds had been stolen by Jian Chen. However, the king wasn't sad in the very least. The smile on his face could not be said to be unhappy at all. For the king to be able to make a great genius become their imperial protector, this was a great honor for the Qinhuang kingdom. In the future, it could be possible that the Qinhuang kingdom would be able to stand alongside the three great empires of the Tian-Yuan continent. Chapter 398. A gorgeous exit. The 50th birthday celebration for the king of the Qinhuang kingdom quickly came to the end. When the nobles and officials had all bade their farewells to Jianchen, he immediately went for his own room. Now that Jianchen was an imperial protector for the Qinhuang kingdom, his status was far different than from when he first came. He had been given a splendid new palace to live in called the Qin Heaven Palace. The Qin Heaven Palace was where only imperial protectors were permitted to live in. Not only was it grand in scale, but even the interior furnishing and arrangements were superior to Qin Ji's flowing cloud palace. Carrying the still sleeping heavenly tiger god, Jianchen followed the palace maid to the Qin Heaven Palace. Looking all around at the splendor of the palace, Jianchen was momentarily speechless. The Qin Heaven Palace was so splendid that Jianchen could swear that he had never seen such a grand palace before. Great imperial protector, allow this servant to help you bathe and your other needs. The beautiful maids accompanying Jianchen spoke with expectant faces. The female maids were all carefully selected by the king and were around the age of 20 as well. Not only were they extremely beautiful, but they were also virgins. Still looking around the resplendent palace, he waved a hand toward the maids behind him. You may leave. Great imperial master, could it be this servant is not suitable for your needs? The maids cried out miserably to Jianchen. Their faces were a mixture of desire and misery. Not only was Jianchen very handsome, but with a glorious title of an imperial protector, it would be a great honor to spend time with him. You can go, I am not used to being served on. If I have something to ask for, I will call for one of you. Jianchen spoke calmly before walking with the tiger cub. Seeing Jianchen disappear, all of the carefully selected beautiful women had disappointed looks on their faces and walked out with sorrow seen clearly on their faces. On the outside of the palace, 500 armored soldiers stood quietly as if they were statues. With solemn expressions on their faces, they looked extremely impressive as befitting their positions as the guards of an imperial protector. To them, this was the greatest honor they could receive. No other guard would be as well respected as them. Aside from the other guards protecting the other imperial protectors, no other palace guard could compare to them, or even the army. All of these palace guards were great Saint Masters at the very least, with 5 Earth Saint Masters captains led by a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. All of this could be said to be Jianchen's personal army that served only the imperial protector, and even the king wouldn't be able to command them. The night quickly passed without incident, and by the next morning, one of the palace captain assembled outside. A report for the imperial protector. The third prince wishes to see you. Once he had made the leap to become an imperial protector, Jianchen's status had suddenly surpassed Qin Ji's own status. Now, if Qin Ji wished to enter the Qin Heaven Palace, he would need to ask for Jianchen's permission. Quickly, Jianchen walked out to greet Qin Ji and personally led him in. Touched by this gesture, Qin Ji followed Jianchen in with some joy. Within the palace, Jianchen had commanded the servants to move away so the two could have a talk in private. Congratulating Jianchen on his promotion to become an imperial protector, Qin Ji had truly felt happy to see Jianchen's status go up. Talking cordially with Qin Ji, Jianchen felt that despite the sudden winds of change blowing in his favor, his friendship with Qin Ji should remain unaffected. He should treat him as he had before this, since if it were not for Qin Ji, then Jianchen wouldn't have this honor in the first place. Jianchen, now that you are the imperial protector of our Qinhuang kingdom, the space gate is open for you to use at any time. However, I hope that you could stay here for a little longer. Qin Ji smiled. Jianchen shook his head gravely. I'm sorry, but I must hurry on over. Now that I can use the space gate at any time, I must go now. The longer I wait, the more anxious I feel. Jianchen, could you tell me just what matter has gotten you so anxious? Would I be able to help you in any way? Qin Ji asked in concern. Now that Jian Chen's status had changed, he was even more prepared to help him. Hesitating for a small moment, Jian Chen relented. My homeland is on the verge of a war. I must hurry on over there or else I'm afraid something terrible may happen. Growing serious, Qin Ji asked about the nature of the war and the finer details of the situation. After listening to everything, his face dropped in seriousness and smiled. A small matter then. With such a small region declaring war, our Qinhuang kingdom will be able to resolve it without question. Jian Chen, you can mobilize any of the elite masters in our army. Do you wish to use them? That won't be necessary. My homeland is still quite some distance away even after the space gate. With my speed, it should take 2 or 3 months to arrive, but with an army, the speed would be drastically slower. By the time the army gets there, it would take at least a year. Jian Chen replied. Then take some of the Imperial advisors at the very least. With your position, you could take all of the Imperial advisors without opposition or question. Don't worry, our Qinhuang kingdom has 4 unbelievably strong Imperial protectors to remain here to defend the place without worry. Jian Chen hesitated as he listened. He knew that the Jessan kingdom had a dozen Heaven Saint Masters at the most, and the other 4 great kingdoms had at least 23 of them. This difference in strength was far too great. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Chen's face, Qin Ji knew of the conundrum within his mind. Encouraging him, Qin Ji spoke. Jian Chen, don't hesitate and don't forget your power. You have the authority to mobilize such a force. After some consideration, Jian Chen had finally consented to Qin Ji's proposal. For the sake of insurance, Jian Chen would bring some of the Imperial advisors with him. Jian Chen, you need not worry about the limits. With your command, you needn't even report this to the king personally. Have the palace guards gather some of the Imperial advisors and convene here. Qin Ji spoke since he knew Jian Chen wasn't as knowledgeable about his newfound authority yet. Afterward, Jian Chen had followed Qin Ji's proposal and had the palace guards gather up the Imperial advisors. In a flash, 20 varying aged Imperial advisors had convened at the Qin Heaven Palace. Although Jian Chen was quite young, his strength had already earned the respect of all the Imperial advisors. Despite the position between them and Jian Chen wasn't too far apart, they wished to become friends with Jian Chen. In their hearts, they knew that not only was Jian Chen accepted by the 4 Imperial protectors, Jian Chen would sooner or later step into the realm of the Saint Rulers and even the Saint King realm. By then, they would want to be in his good graces, so this was the time to increase their connections. Once Jian Chen had explained his reason and plan to the 20 Imperial advisors, each one of them had readily agreed to go with him. Seeing just how enthusiastic they were in replying, Jian Chen had doubted the space and power between an Imperial advisor and Imperial protector. In fact, he had begun to question whether or not if it was him being asked for help from the Imperial advisors instead. Just then, a refined-looking elder walked forward with his hands cupped in salute. Great Imperial protector, this one is Shao Tian, the grandfather of Shao Han. I've heard yesterday that my dunce grandchild has offended you. I can only hope that you will forgive my unworthy grandchild. I've already taught him a lesson and locked him in as punishment. This journey with you will serve as a part my atonement for my grandchild. I hope that you will forgive him. Jian Chen looked at Shao Tian as if to study him. Shao Tian was wearing a white robe in a refined manner and his white hair was tied up around his head. There was a heroic spirit to him, and justice could easily be used to describe his aura. Is this the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master Qin Ji told me about? Jian Chen thought. Knowing who Shao Tian was completely different from actually meeting him. After seeing him just once however, Jian Chen had a feeling that Shao Tian was an extremely righteous person. This type of open and straightforward person was a clear-cut contrast to his grandchild Shao Han. After some quick thinking, Jian Chen cupped his hands with a smile. Mr. Shao Han, you must be joking. The matter with your grandchild I have already forgotten about. If Mr. Shao Han wishes to come with me, then I have no objections. Nonetheless, I am grateful for your support. Smiling widely, Shao Tian spoke. You are too modest. To be able to accompany an Imperial protector is a great honor to me. Then after selecting the 4 strongest and most reliable individuals, he began to prepare to leave for the Jessan Kingdom from the Qin Heaven Palace and soon headed toward the Space Gate with Qin Ji leading the way. Leading the 5 Imperial advisors with Xiao Tian as the strongest one there, the other 4 Imperial advisors were 2 fourth cycles and 2 third cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Although they weren't the strongest of the Imperial advisors, Jian Chen had faith in them. The Space Gate was in the center of the palace, and with Jian Chen's status, he didn't require notifying anyone before using it. Taking the 5 Imperial advisors to it, he handed several Class 5 monster cores and began to locate the desired destination. Then, in a single line, they crossed through the Space Gate. Chapter 399, Return of a King in a Single Stride. Jian Chen traveled countless of miles away from the Qinhuang kingdom. For the 5 Imperial advisors, they had traveled into a strange new area. The Space Gate they had traveled from slowly disappeared from view as Jian Chen took the tiger cub ahead and started to scout the area out. No matter where he turned his head to, he could see no signs of plant life or anything else. The entire place was a barren land. Great Imperial Protector, where is this place? One of the Imperial advisors spoke with a questioning look as if trying to figure out what place this was. Qing Xiaofan, you should stay behind the Imperial Protector and speak less rubbish. Another Imperial advisor spoke. Forcing out a smile, Qing Xiaofan laughed in embarrassment. I'm just very curious. From the 5 Imperial advisors that followed Jian Chen, there was Xiao Tian, Qing Xiaofan, Dongyi Junbai, Chao Kaqin, and Tian Luo. 2 of the elders were Qing Xiaofan and Dongyi Junbai, who were both 4th cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Chao Kaqin and Tian Luo were both 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters, but all 5 of these men were already over 100 years old. It was at this moment the tiger cub had suddenly awoke by opening its bright eyes in curiosity at the strange new place it was in. Taking notice of the cub, Jian Chen placed it on the ground. The cub was already decently big and was already the size of a mature dog. By this point, it wasn't suitable for the tiger to be around Jian Chen's chest. On the ground, the tiger cub started to run around merrily while everyone watched it revolve in a circle. From time to time, it would sniff each one of the 5 Imperial advisors. Taking out a map from his space ring, Jian Chen scoured over it before looking dejected as he glanced around. I don't have a map of this area, so I have no idea where we are. Let us find a nearby road. Jian Chen didn't have the most accurate coordinates of the Jessan Kingdom, so the Space Gate had only sent them to an approximate area near it. Right now, Jian Chen didn't even know if he was in the Jessan Kingdom or not. Qing Xiaofan cupped his hands together. Then please guide us well, Imperial Protector. Well then, let's leave this place. Jian Chen waved his hand, causing a large bubble of wind to envelop the tiger cub and levitated it into the air. The cub began to growl in discontent as it flew into the air. It was as if it wanted to be held by Jian Chen instead. Both of its eyes looked pitifully toward Jian Chen as tears began to well up in them. Imperial Protector, this magical beast of yours is quite intelligent. It has to be a high-leveled magical beast. Qing Xiaofan spoke. Laughing, Jian Chen chose not to explain anything and instead patted the cub's head with his hand. You've grown far too big for me to carry anymore. Allow me to bring you through the air with my wind element instead. Don't worry, I won't let you fall. As if the tiger cub understood Jian Chen's words, it continued to shake its head as tears continued to roll down its face as if wanting to be put down on the ground. In the next moment, its entire body began to shrink at a rapid pace before turning into the size of a tiny cat. It looked adorable. This magical beast can manipulate its body size? How extraordinary. One of the 5 Imperial advisors looked beyond surprised at the cub. Even Jian Chen had a surprised look on his face, but he knew of the tiger's identity already and so he quickly calmed down. Shooting a glance at the 5 Imperial advisors to his side, he smiled. This white tiger is vastly different from the other ones. Being able to change its body size is its innate ability. That sounds about right. This tiger-like magical beast even has wings on its back. This must be a variant. Some of the magical beast variants have unknown abilities that can allow a good amount of the magical beasts to be able to transform their body. Deng Junbai spoke up. He was the oldest out of everyone here and so his experience wasn't lacking. After that, no one had bothered to investigate the tiger's identity, allowing Jian Chen to breathe out a breath in relief. Holding the tiger to his chest, Jian Chen began to fly through the air. An hour later, the group of travelers had already flew for a long distance. At this moment, a tiny city suddenly came into view. With his eyes shining brightly, Jian Chen hastened his way over there with the group of men behind him shooting along into the city with him. This was a second-class city so it wasn't too large. The moment Jian Chen walked in with the other 5 Imperial advisors, the cat-sized tiger kept its head all around as it took in the sights. Walking into the largest store in the city, Jian Chen bought the most expansive and detailed map of the surrounding area. In a quick moment, he had located the coordinates of the Jessen Kingdom in comparison to where he was. Right now, there was 15,000 kilometers of distance to travel and 2 kingdoms to go through. Shopkeeper, might I ask, do you know if there is a war or anything happening within the Jessen Kingdom? Jian Chen asked. The current state of the Jessen Kingdom is a mystery to me since it's too far away. However, some news did travel here that a war had broken out 3 months ago. I believe there were 4 kingdoms that united against the Jessen Kingdom. That kingdom is finished. The shopkeeper sighed. Paling, Jian Chen quickly tossed a purple coin onto the table and walked out with the map. After distinguishing the way, Jian Chen flew into the air in the direction of the Jessen Kingdom. Straight away, the 5 other Imperial advisors flew into the air in pursuit, leaving the rest of the streets in silent awe at the 6 figures. In half a day, the entire streets exploded with gossip relating to them. Within a second-class city, an Earth Saint Master was already hard to spot, but a single Heaven Saint Master was even more rare. With 6 of them suddenly appearing out of nowhere, it would lead to a huge uproar for everyone. For the rest of the day and night, Jian Chen continued to fly without stopping. Finally, on the morning of the second day, they finally arrived at the bordering kingdom of Qinhuang Kingdom's Stronghold, stopping there in order to obtain some information. He had to make sure of the current state of affairs and make a contingency plan. Chapter 400, Seething Anger. During the peak hours to eat breakfast, Jian Chen had taken the tiger cub and the 5 Imperial advisors from the Qinhuang Kingdom into the best restaurant in a city. The 6 men crowded around a table and began to enjoy the best meals the place had to offer. The tiger cub, on the other hand, was voraciously eating a special plate of delicious-smelling barbecued beef. With a content purr, it continued to swallow the pieces of meat one after another while the rest of the inn gave the table a strange look. Jian Chen sat at the table and listened around for the nearby chatter without eating a bite. The Qinhuang Kingdom was especially close to the Jessen Kingdom, so Jian Chen was able to make discreet inquiries about the current state of the Jessen Kingdom. As for information that was spread by mercenaries, the information they told would be both fast in spreading and reliable in truth. The Jessen Kingdom is done for. The 4 kingdoms combined have well over 2 million people at the moment, while the Jessen Kingdom has only several hundred thousands men. How could they stop that? The Jessen Kingdom has the most fertile territory out of every kingdom nearby, so the other kingdoms have long since been eyeing it like candy. Right now, the Jessen Kingdom is relying on the strongholds to buy them some time, but their army will break down after some time. I heard that the Jessen Kingdom had originally 6 million people, but now they were below 1 million. By now, the kingdom surely must be recruiting soldiers in a frenzy. There's only 200 middle-tier magical crystal cannons supporting them, but their supply of monster cores are already at an all-time low. Even the national treasury is nearly empty, so the major and minor powers of the kingdom are supplying the monster cores. Half a month ago 10 of the cannons had exploded after being used too frequently. I heard they had blown up one stronghold and caused thousands to die. The difference between the Jessen Kingdom and the 4 allied kingdoms is far too much. Even if they were to convene all the soldiers and employ mercenaries, their fighting power wouldn't exceed 3 million. The 4 allied kingdoms have well over triple that amount if they wanted to. Furthermore, the Jessen Kingdom doesn't have half the amount of experts the other side has, This time, the Jesson Kingdom will fall. I've heard that 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Jesson Kingdom have already died and another 3 sustained serious injuries. The 4 allied kingdoms, on the other hand, have a single Heaven Saint Master on the verge of dying. But rumors say a Radiant Saint Master brought him back to full health and healed the others. That means they suffered virtually no damages. After hearing these bits of information, Jian Chen grew even more pale in the face. Although things had not yet reached the worst-case scenario, the situation was looking bleak for the entire kingdom with the difference in military might. You guys won't know this, but 3 days ago, I came back from the Yanyan Kingdom. From there, I heard rumors about a terrifying Heaven Saint Master from the Jesson Kingdom. Going against 6 other Heaven Saint Masters by himself and sustaining serious injuries, he used some sort of supernatural Heaven tier battle skill to kill 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters and heavily injuring another 3. The remaining survivors lost their courage and fled from him. I heard about that too. People say that even among the Jesson Kingdom, he was a Heaven Saint Master that was extremely low-profiled. Not being counted in the top 10 experts and with even fewer people knowing his existence, it is only now that people have started to notice him. I think his name is Chang Wuji. Then, another one of the travel-weary mercenaries spoke out to the previous person that spoke. So what? That Chang Wuji must be an expert at the very pinnacle of his realm, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to employ such a strength. Let me tell you an even more shocking piece of information. From the battle 3 days ago, an Earth Saint Master was able to severely injure one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom. Impossible, just how could an Earth Saint Master be a match for a Heaven Saint Master? I don't believe it. Why don't you go and trick a demon before trying us? The entire inn began to burst into chatter without anyone believing what the mercenary had said. I wouldn't lie. They say that the Earth Saint Master used some sort of Heaven tier battle skill and heavily injured the Heaven Saint Master. If not for the intervention of another Heaven Saint Master, the Earth Saint Master would have killed the Heaven Saint Master. TSK, that battlefield was a spectacular sight. When a Heaven tier battle skill was used, the sky would turn a different color and black clouds would roll in. With the sands and stones flying through the air, it would be difficult to see anything and hear nothing but the Earth Saint Master using his Heaven tier battle skill. Each time he did, the earth shook, including the Jesson Kingdom's stronghold. At that point, everyone had been scared witless. No wonder I felt something was amiss 3 days ago, but could this really be true? That'd be terrifying. The Jesson Kingdom's stronghold is only 1,000 kilometers away from this place. That's not far away at all. For the tremors caused by a Heaven tier battle skill to be felt here? That's impossible. The man continued to speak. That's not all. People say that this Earth Saint Master was a wind-attributed Saint Force user with an impeccably fast speed. Even after contending with the Heaven Saint Master for half the day, the 2 Heaven Saint Masters did not manage to chase him down and kill him. That's pretty amazing. Is he even an Earth Saint Master? Several people from the inn began to murmur in surprise at this supposed Earth Saint Master's strength. Hearing this, Jian Chen had a slight smile on his face. He had already guessed that this speed could only belong to the Heaven tier battle skill wielder Ming Dong, who was also an Earth Saint Master. But the man hadn't finished saying all that he knew on the subject. The fall of 2 Heaven Saint Masters hadn't gone unnoticed by the 4 allied kingdoms. 2 days later, the 4 kingdoms employed 2 million soldiers to the northern stronghold to engage in a day and night battle. The sounds of the war had deafened the ears of everyone, and the blood of the fallen dyed the ground a permanent red with the bodies stacked up on top of a mountain. By that point, the northern stronghold of the Jesson Kingdom could not longer keep up with the battle. Even the reinforced tempered steel gate had been broken down, with both sides nursing heavy losses. I heard a Heaven Saint Master from the Qinhuang Kingdom had even captured a high-ranking officer. Cutting off both arms and legs, the Qinhuang Kingdom then had him strung up on top of the walls of the Qinhuang Kingdom's stronghold. How savage! Did the Qinhuang Kingdom have some sort of intense grudge with that officer? Even with the advantage they had, did they have to act in such a manner? For both his arms and legs to be severed, that person must be an illustrious general then. The inn started to chatter once more with this new piece of information with an interested fervor. Smiling, the man shook his head. You guess wrongly. That person was no illustrious general, he was just some nobody called Qinhuang who, I believe. He was merely just a frontline commander. Seated from not too far away, Jian Chen's entire body froze up as his face suddenly turned pale to a terrifying degree. In an instant, he had disappeared and reappeared right in front of the man who spoke. Both of his hands grabbed onto the clothes of the speaker and lifted him straight out of his stool as Jian Chen thundered, "What did you just say? Who was the person that had their limbs amputated and strung up on the walls?" Jian Chen's eyes grew extremely red and a killing intent could be felt from him. "Bastard, are you trying to die?" The elder exploded in rage as he grabbed at Jian Chen's neck with his own hands. "Speak!" Jian Chen roared like how a furious lion would. His voice had caused the entire inn to shake as his eyes grew even colder. The spark in his eyes was almost like a sharp sword that could pierce into the man's own eyes, terrifying him so much he couldn't look at Jian Chen directly. At the same time, an extremely formidable amount of killing intent exuded from Jian Chen's body, causing everyone in the inn to feel like they had been dropped into a vat of icy cold water, chilling them down to their very bones. The previously noisy inn had instantly turned quiet. Everyone's eyes turned toward the furious Jian Chen with their bodies trembling in fear. Not a single one of them had dared to move since from the youngster's aura, they could all feel a terrifying amount of power within him. Even the man that Jian Chen had grabbed hold of had been stunned into silence. Without another outburst, his face had turned pale and his entire body began to tremble fiercely. Jian Chen's entire killing aura had covered the place, but it had affected him the most. With the aura, the man felt himself unable to breathe and slowly suffocating to death. Don't kill me. What did you want to know? I've already said everything. I know, the man stuttered in fear. By now, he had begun to treat Jian Chen as a terrifying death god that caused even his soul to quake. Jian Chen's eyes grew in ferocity as he stared at the man with unconcealed bloodlust. Who had his arms and legs amputated before being strung up on the wall? You better not lie to me, or I'll let you die a pauper's death. With his last sentence, Jian Chen's words had already devolved into a primal growl that combined scarily with his bloodshot eyes. I said, that person was Chang'yang. Chang'yang who? He was captured by a Heaven Saint Master in the Pingyang Kingdom. Ow. All 4 limbs were cut off, and then strung up on the wall, for an entire day. The man stammered. Chapter 401, Advent of the Furious. After confirming things, Jian Chen's face grew extremely dark. The killing intent that was originally within the inn had instantly exploded outward to cover the streets, causing even those on the outside to suddenly find it hard to breathe. It was almost as if the entire temperature nearby had gone down by several degrees and dunked them all within a pool of icy water. This effect on them had been so extreme that it caused even their spirits to shake. The 5 Imperial advisors all gave each other a baffled look. They had never seen such a strong amount of killing intent come out from Jian Chen before and had no idea what to do. Big brother, Jian Chen's eyes grew redder as if blood was starting to gather within it. With a growl, he tossed the man aside and instantly flew out of the inn with the wind element in the world accelerating his speed away from the place. As he flew into the sky, a cyan-colored glow appeared around his body and shot him straight forward before disappearing from sight completely. Imperial Protector. The 5 Imperial advisors cried out. Each one bolted from their stools with serious face. Seeing Jian Chen's reaction to what the previous person said, each one of them could guess that there was a connection between Jian Chen and the man who had all of his limbs cut off. You 5 go help the Jesson Kingdom fight off the 4 allied kingdoms. Protect everyone from the Changyang clan. Straight away, the 5 men could hear Jian Chen's icy voice call out to them. Jian Chen's announcement caused them to feel speechless. With a helpless look to each other, Xiao Tian spoke out, "Let's go to the Jesson Kingdom then." Jian Chen's sudden departure had caused the tiger cub to be hurt. Unable to continue eating the barbecued beef on the table, the tiger cub instantly leaped down from the table and sped towards the doors. Both of its eyes began to well up with tears as it cried out desolately. The scene was like a mother abandoning its child, causing everyone watching to have an unbearable feeling of pity. Seeing how pitiful the tiger cub was, the 5 Imperial advisors looked on with a disturbed expression. Walking up to it, Xiao Tian wrapped the tiger cub around his chest before looking back to the others. "Let us go." After walking out the inn, the 5 Imperial advisors flew off into the sky, leaving the rest of the inn speechless. Jian Chen was wrapped up in a layer of wind, causing his body to fly off at a speeding light that was easily seen even in the daytime. Right now, his travel speed had reached an all-time high as he flew toward the Qinhuang Kingdom's stronghold. Within Jian Chen's mind, he couldn't help but think back to his eldest brother Jianghu. A brother like that was an absolutely unforgettable person. While Jian Chen had been no help to Jianghu at all back in Kargath Academy, his eldest brother had helped him out whenever possible. This was a tried testament to just how much Jianghu cared about him. Aside from his father and mother and his second sister, Jianghu was the 4th person to matter to him. Although Jian Chen had left his home to travel for many years, in the end, he was still Jian Chen. His personality had undergone no change, and the people he cared about were still those closest to him. "Big brother, absolutely nothing can happen to you. I, Jian Chen, pledge that I will raise the Qinhuang Kingdom to the ground if even a single hair is harmed. I'll let the 4 kingdoms be the offerings." Jian Chen's eyes radiated with bloodlust and a large amount of killing intent as he flew forward. There were 6 kingdoms surrounding the Jessan Kingdom. The Qiangan Kingdom, the Qinhuang Kingdom and the Jessan Kingdom were connected to each other like a triangle. He crossed over the Qiangan Kingdom's stronghold and flew another 3,000 kilometers toward the Qinhuang Kingdom's stronghold. In a distance, the stronghold of the Qinhuang Kingdom could already be seen by Jian Chen. On the 80-meter-tall stronghold walls were a myriad of stone-faced soldiers. There were about 2 million soldiers stationed within the stronghold, and from the skies, the tents stretched across the grounds like a continuous blanket. There were plenty of soldiers that were also patrolling around the stronghold wearing their armor. Another 1,000,000 soldiers had already gathered outside the northern Jessan Kingdom stronghold. While that was a huge number ready for a full-on assault, there was still the 2 million soldiers left as a reserve just in case there was a need. Floating in the air several kilometers away from the Qinhuang Kingdom. In his eyes, there was grief as his body began to shake and tremble violently. Just 15 kilometers away, a limbless and bloody body could be seen tied to the stronghold walls. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and even his hair had become a greasy red along with the rope restricting his body. Despite being over a dozen kilometers away, Jian Chen's omnipresence ability was enough to allow him see this. Despite all the years that had passed, Jianghu still looked the same as when Jian Chen had left. The only difference now was that his face was as pale as paper and his eyes were closed. Whether he was alive or not, Jian Chen didn't know. Seeing how desolate Jianghu was, Jian Chen's eyes began to dilate in fury and bloodlust. His levitating figure began to tremble even more violently, feeling as if he was going to drop down from the skies at any moment. In the past, Jian Chen had wished to himself many times over that he could see his family members once more. At that time, it would have given hope and joy. In the past, he had also thought about returning to Kargath Academy and let his elder brother see his strength. He had never imagined that his triumphant return to his homeland and family would be met with a heart-wrenching tragedy that he couldn't bear to accept. Eldest brother. Jian Chen howled in grief before his eyes flashed red and a large amount of killing intent began to billow outward in a single wave of emotions like a cloud. The air around Jian Chen turned cyan in color before he instantly flew toward the stronghold walls. The 2 million guards standing watch over at the stronghold had jolted with surprise. All of the soldiers within the tents immediately charged out and stared at the incoming figure of Jian Chen. Bang 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 bang, several drums could be heard from within the stronghold, signifying that an enemy was invading and that the entire stronghold should prepare itself. On top of the city walls, an armored middle-aged man walked out from a nearby building. Seeing the flying figure of Jian Chen, his face blanched for a moment before barking out an order, "Release the arrows." At the command, several whizzing sounds could be heard in the air as several large crossbolts were shot from the stronghold. Jian Chen's eyes flashed with a violet light as he began to control the world itself. The crossbolts flying at him several kilometers away began to slow down in speed noticeably. Not too long later, the crossbolts froze up in midair, much to the shock of the soldiers watching. Every single one of the crossbolts began to revolve in suspension before an azure and violet flash of light enveloped them. In the next second, they were sent flying back at the stronghold with a speed even faster than when they were first shot. The soldiers looking on from the walls cried out in shock. Before the commander could bark out another order, the crossbolts pierced into the stronghold walls. Bang 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 bang, following the series of explosions, the walls of the stronghold could be seen with several holes and plumes of smoke coming out of it. Several of the more unfortunate soldiers had been struck through the chest with the arrow, and the structural foundation of several buildings had been compromised. By this point, Jian Chen had already arrived at Jianghu's side. With great sorrow and tears, Jian Chen cut apart at the rope holding his brother. It was with great pain that he held Jianghu to his chest. Eldest brother. Seeing how Jianghu was unconscious, Jian Chen called out in grief once more. With his eldest brother a cripple in physique, there was no way Jian Chen would have been able to accept this. Hurriedly taking out one of the radiant spirit pills he had taken from the cave during his time in the gathering of the mercenaries, he forcefully fed the pill to Jianghu to preserve his life. His eldest brother was still alive, but because of the blood loss, he was barely hanging on by a thread. Taking out a gem from his space ring, the commander of the army immediately crushed it before jumping down the walls. With his strength as an Earth Saint Master, he stood no chance at all against a Heaven Saint Master, so the only chance in preserving his life was to flee. Fire, fire. Shoot him down. Several soldiers began to cry out before shooting the crossbows at Jian Chen. One by one, the iron crossbolts began to fire at Jian Chen like moths to the flame and covering the entire sky with iron. But Jian Chen's ire had already climbed up to the peak. In this moment, his eyes had flashed a dangerous azure and violet color before his mind force encompassed the entire area around him. The crossbolts were unable to advance any closer to his body and froze up in midair. Slowly turning around, they ricocheted back towards the soldiers with the azure and violet light reinforcing its speed. Cries of misery could be heard as soldiers fell to the ground by the mass. With the azure and violet sword chi reinforcing the crossbolts, there was no way for any of the soldiers to defend themselves. Jian Chen continued to control the crossbolts with his mind, slaughtering every single one of the soldiers in his sight. In a short moment, several 100,000 soldiers garrisoned in the stronghold had been massacred. Afterward, the azure and violet sword chi that were around the crossbolts began to converge in front of Jian Chen before forming a 10-meter-long sword. Grabbing hold of it, Jian Chen instantly swung it at the stronghold. Chapter 402, Chang Wuji Bang. Following the sounds of a huge explosion, the giant sword made of the crossbolt struck against the stronghold walls. Despite the tempered steel that could resist the blasts of a magical crystal cannon, the stronghold walls easily crumpled like tofu at the reinforced sword strike. As soon as the dust had cleared away, a 30-meter diameter hole could be seen. At this sight, the remaining survivors looked at the hole in terror before everyone began to dash in every single way possible in an attempt to evade the falling debris and escape. Jian Chen's eyes grew even more ferocious with the azure and violet light in them. Today, I will raise this stronghold. Jian Chen will make the Qinhuang kingdom will pay a heavy price. Each word had been pronounced with a powerful boom that was emphasized by his hatred. His killing intent quickly spread around the area and brought the temperature down by several degrees. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the countless crossbolts rained down onto the ground, destroying it. Another barrage of crossbolts slammed against the stronghold walls, creating yet another 30-diameter hole. Suddenly, a whistling sound could be heard as a strong amount of aura filled the air. In the next moment, 4 figures could be seen flying through the air at breakneck speeds. Regarding the 4 heaven saint masters from the Qinhuang kingdom, Jian Chen's eyes began to frost over with killing intent. The crossbolts formed a giant sword with azure and violet sword chi flickering all around the blade before instantly shooting toward the 4. With a great shout, the 4 heaven saint masters reinforced themselves with saint force before colliding with the giant sword. When the 2 sides collided, a loud explosion that rocked the entire area could be heard. A bright explosion of colors could be seen flying everywhere, causing the soldiers right underneath the blast to be sent flying through the air with serious wounds. Many of them even had their inner organs destroyed by the blast, killing them instantly. In a battle between heaven saint masters, even the fallout from each and every strike was capable of killing a person. If even an earth saint master were to get too close, they would find it hard to withstand the shockwaves. The shockwave rippled 300 meters in diameter within the stronghold, burying many soldiers underneath the blast and even causing serious damage to the walls, which began to wobble and shake. A battle between 5 heaven saint masters was far too intense. Even the giant 10-meter-long sword Jian Chen was wielding crumbled apart under the 4 heaven saint masters from the Qinhuang kingdom. In the next second after the shock wave had died down, Jian Chen enveloped Jianghu's body in a bubble, allowing it to float in midair. By now, the 4 heaven saint masters had already drawn within 100 meters of Jian Chen, each one leering dangerously at him. However, when they saw just how young Jian Chen was, they were startled beyond belief. Jian Chen was far too young to be wielding such strength. They had been unwilling to accept that such a youngster was able to attain the realm they had attained. He must have used some medicine to recover his youth, claimed one. The other 3 heaven saint masters firmly believed that this was the case. Another one of the 4 bellowed out, "You there, state your name. Who was the one responsible for cutting off all 4 limbs of my eldest brother?" Jian Chen growled dangerously, ignoring the question. "What, your eldest brother?" The 4 heaven saint masters were startled. The person Jian Chen was holding had his 4 limbs hacked off. Could Jianghu have a heaven saint master leveled brother? The 4 heaven saint masters were so startled that they thought they had misheard. Who was the one who did it? Jian Chen repeated once more with his killing intent filling the air. Giving a look to each other, the 4 men began to try to figure out Jian Chen's identity. "Sire, who are you? I believe I may have misheard something." Just then, an enormous streak of fire could be seen flying across the sky like a streaking shooting star that was falling in their general direction. Not too long later, the red light came to a stop 500 meters away in the air, revealing an elder with the fire element surrounding his body like a bubble. The elder was rather ordinary looking with his white hair tied up behind his wrinkled and pale face. When the elder glanced around, he immediately took notice of the suspended limbless figure of Jianghu. Paling even more, the elder let out a cry of utter grief and sorrow, "Young master." The 4 heaven saint masters turned to look at the newcomer with an angry sneer. Chang Wuji, you really did come. After killing 2 of our Qinhuang kingdom's experts, I shall have you buried right next to them today." Chang Wuji's eyes instantly blazed with a ferocious killing intent as he glared at the 4. "You dare cut off the 4 limbs of the young master? Very well then. Allow this old man to accompany you, even at the cost of my life. I shall see you all slain." How brassy. Even as injured you are, you can still utter such words. One of the heaven saint masters snorted in disdain. Cupping his hands and bowing behind him, he spoke, "Senior Qian Yun, please show yourself." His voice was spoken in such a way that it could be heard from far away. A white-robed elder could soon be seen flying toward the 4 heaven saint masters. The elder had his hair tied up in a crane style and looked as refined as a scholar. Judging from his aura, Jian Chen felt as if this was a man who had been enlightened. "Qian Yun, I never would have thought you would bring your Qiangan kingdom into this. Could it be you are also conspiring against the Jessen kingdom with the other 4 kingdoms?" Chang Wuji's face was like stone now. The situation had grown extremely dire. If the Qiangan kingdom entered into the equation, then that meant there was 5 kingdoms fighting against the Jesson kingdom. Chang Wuji had also known that Qianyun was a part of the imperial line within the Qiangan kingdom. He had resided within the deepest part of the palace in order to cultivate and had already lived for nearly 400 years. Despite being a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters, he was infinitely close to becoming a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master and was also the strongest individual in the Qiangan kingdom. Qianyun looked at Chang Wuji for a moment before looking at Jian Chen with a dark look. Who is he? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang kingdom shook their heads. We don't know who he is, but he has to be related to the Jesson kingdom. Qianyun stared at Jian Chen for a brief moment before turning back to Chang Wuji with a smile. Brother Wuji, we haven't seen each other in 100 years, but I didn't think that your strength would reach such a degree. The Qiangan kingdom is not involving itself in this affair. I merely wish for your heaven tier battle skill. You want my heaven tier battle skill? Chang Wuji growled. Correct, Brother Wuji, if you hand over the battle skill to me, then I will back out of this. Qianyun laughed. Humph, you don't lack courage. The 3 forms of the wild python is the legacy imparted to me by my master, yet you still dare to ask. Do you not fear the return of my master and the destruction of your Qiangan kingdom? Chang Wuji spoke dangerously. Qianyun had a look of fear streak across his face for a moment before smiling. Chang Wuji, you are still thinking of your master who has been lost for dozens of years? You are correct that Patriarch Changyang's strength is truly astounding and has no match. But you've forgotten, he has been lost these many years. With his age already reaching 900 years old, he has surely reached the end of his lifespan. The fact that no information has been heard from him is proof enough that he is dead. Humph, my master was a genius even among the heavens and a person without equal. Just what mystery in the world could stop him? When he returns, he will raise your Qiangan kingdom. Sneering, Qianyun spoke. Chang Wuji, I, Qianyun, am not an easily threatened person. I have given my word, if you hand over the heaven tier battle skill to me, then I will leave. Don't think that just because this old man has been injured, you will not escape unharmed. A surge of energy became to well up from within Chang Wuji. Despite the injured state he was in, his head was still held up high without fear of combat. At that moment, the 5 enemy Heaven Saint Masters were preparing to fight. As they stared at Chang Wuji and Jian Chen, a battle was preparing to break out. Just then, a cold voice could be heard. Hand them over to me. Today, I shall raise the Pingyang kingdom and hang the heads of all those here on these walls. It was Jian Chen who had spoken with a calm voice. Although there was killing intent radiating from his body, everyone else was surprised by his words. Raise the Pingyang kingdom. Hang the heads of the strong on the walls. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang kingdom had taken this as a personal insult. Steaming with anger, a flood of killing intent began to direct itself toward Jian Chen. One of the Heaven Saint Masters had barked out, Brat, you cannot distinguish what is the ground and what is the sky. Do you think you are Patriarch Changyang and will destroy the Pingyang kingdom with your mere Heaven Saint Master strength? Even Chang Wuji had a flabbergasted look as he looked at Jian Chen, and the Changyang who with a skeptical look. He had no idea just what connection there was between these two in order for Jian Chen to be willing to risk his own life and brave a fight with these Heaven Saint Masters. Chang Wuji began to inspect the youngster that was Jian Chen with suspicion. There was a familiar feeling to him as if the two had met before, but he had no idea just where he could have possibly met such a youngster before. Despite the feeling, he had no recollection of Jian Chen since all of the Heaven Saint Masters he had met before were all middle-aged men. Chapter 403, 1 against 5. With that, Jian Chen reinforced the bubble surrounding Changyang who with another wind element bubble before sending him to Chang Wuji's side. The fierce blaze of the fire element had already calmed down a bit as if Chang Wuji was afraid of hurting Changyang who. Gently grabbing hold of him, the elder's eyes softened in its gaze. Young master, this is all my fault. Chang Wuji's lips began to tremble as he spoke. After using his Heaven Tier battle skill to kill 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters, the Pingyang kingdom had taken revenge on Changyang Hu. In this current state of Changyang Hu, Chang Wuji had been grievously hurt in spirit. Qinhuang, who had grown up under his supervision, and while they had a master and slave relationship, their feelings for each other were closer to being called a family. To see Qinhuang, who was a cripple, Chang Wuji had no idea just how Qinhuang Ba would take this. Quashing his feelings, Chang Wuji looked to Jian Chen and spoke honestly. I don't know Sire's name, but in the future, our Qinhuang clan will surely thank Sire for his kindness. Jian Chen spoke no words, while Chang Wuji's words had caused him to feel quite happy. Qinhuang, whose current state had forced him to feel no joy. His feelings had taken such a heavy hit that he couldn't even bring himself to talk anymore. Turning back to look at the 5 Heaven Saint Masters, he moved into a fighting stance. Qiangan Kingdom, do you truly wish to interfere? There is still a chance to back out. But Qian Yun was completely unaffected by Jian Chen's demeanor. This old man merely wishes for the heaven tier battle skill. If I can grab a hold of it, then it matters not if I interfere. The Jessen Kingdom is already on the verge of collapse either way. Good, then today I will eliminate your Qiangan Kingdom as well. How arrogant, just who do you think you are? Not only did you wish to raise the Pingyang Kingdom, but my Qiangan Kingdom as well? Qian Yun rebuked, as if insulted by these words. Growing silent, Jian Chen began to blaze up with an intent to fight. His eyes were already flashing with the azure and violet glow, creating a mystifying spectacle that would shock anyone. Extending his right hand, the fallen debris from the stronghold began to float up before shooting toward the 5 men with an azure and violet glow. Not even bothering to spare a glance at this attack, each one of the 5 sneered before a wave of Saint Force surged forward and smashed against the flying debris. But the countless pieces of debris sliced through their Saint Force like butter before continuing onward to the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. Blanching, the 5 immediately grew even more serious. There is a strange force afoot, be careful. Qian Yun remarked before forming a slender longsword with sword chi blazing from it. Slashing at the fragments aimed at him, he began to gracefully shatter each one to dust. The other Heaven Saint Masters hadn't tarried either, immediately taking out their saint weapons, they swung them about to protect themselves. But the swarm of debris was far too much for them, and so several pieces had managed to make their way through their defenses and penetrate into their bodies. There was a shocked look on their faces before throwing out all notions of not taking the fight completely serious. Use your Saint Force to protect yourself. One of the Heaven Saint Masters cried before a colorful swarm of Saint Force covered his own body. It condensed like a protective shroud around his body. However, the shroud had been unable to completely protect its master from the debris and had only managed to slow down the speed. Knowing that this could not be allowed to continue for much longer, the 5 combined their attacks and struck out all over the area before charging toward Jian Chen. Raising both hands and then forming fists, Jian Chen began to levitate the fallen crossbolts on the ground to converge them into one spot. At the same time, several trees began to be forcefully uprooted from the ground and filled the air with wood splinters. In the end, the 2 sources began to combine together in order to form a long sword several hundred meters tall that stabbed into the skies themselves. From far away, it looked as if it was a giant tower that scaled into the heavens while radiating with a bright azure and violet glow. What is this? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom and Qian Yun from the Qiangan Kingdom were stunned. The pieces that were being levitated by Jian Chen had suddenly formed a giant sword out of nowhere. A sight like this had caused them to cry out loud by accident. Is this a heaven tier battle skill? Asked one Heaven Saint Master seriously. It can't be, it doesn't have that power a heaven tier battle skill would exude. This isn't a battle skill. Qian Yun cried out. In the next moment, the giant floating sword began to condense before forming a 100-meter long sword. With this decrease in size, the items making up the sword had been compressed against each other in an inexplicably dense manner. Along with the density of the sword, the brightness of the azure and violet sword chi began to increase as well. With a fierce howl, Jian Chen brought the giant sword smashing down toward the 5 Heaven Saint Masters in an attempt to kill them. Adopting a grim expression, each one of the Heaven Saint Masters cried out as they began to use their advanced Earth tier battle skills. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the energy from the resulting blast threatened to rip apart the skies. The energy continued to cause havoc and destruction as it washed over the air and shook the earth. Several parts of the earth had even crumbled and sunk in from the energy. In the aftermath, all of the surrounding area within a 10-kilometer circumference had been affected. The 5 Heaven Saint Masters began to grow pale as the energy forced their bodies backwards. 2 of the weaker Heaven Saint Masters had already began to spit out blood. Even Jian Chen had been forced to fly backward before stabilizing himself. The area around him began to distort from the energy, making it hard for him to differentiate what was happening. It had only been 1,000 meters before Jian Chen could stabilize his footing. Catching sight of the 5 men, Jian Chen immediately began to congregate all of the surrounding fire element in the world around him before forming 5 different flame swords. Each one flickered with an intense flame that looked as if it could roast the air. In the following seconds, the temperature around the swords had begun to heat up. Whoosh! 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 5 ear-splitting sounds could be heard as the 5 flame swords streaked toward the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. There was a glint of light in Qian Yun's eyes as he flew into the sky to evade the sword aimed at him. Transforming into a streak of white light, he charged straight at Jian Chen. The 4 other Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom were looking even weaker than before now and could not dodge in time. Without any other choice, they instantly utilized their Earth-tier battle skill to strike at the flame swords. The 4 flame swords broke apart upon contact and filled the entire sky with fire. At the same time, because of the sudden expansion, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters were completely submerged within it. After a moment, 4 raggedy figures came flying out of the fire. Each one had a layer of Saint Force protecting their bodies in order to prevent any serious wounds, but the 2 weakest Heaven Saint Masters had several parts of their body looking charred with their clothes already burned away. Blast it all, just how is he this strong? With just a simple sword made of fire, we were completely unable to resist the effects of it. He has to be a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master at the very least. To hell with this, I could clearly see him using the wind element when he was flying, so just how is he able to control the fire element? This brat is far too strong, there's no way he isn't a senior figure that has spent all of his time cultivating. Perhaps he is another ancestor of the Changyang clan? Even with his strength being this strong as a Heaven Saint Master, we are completely unable to do anything. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were completely intimidated by Jian Chen's display of might now. With the 4 of them and Qian Yun combined, their attacks hadn't even inconvenienced Jian Chen yet. Accept your death. Qian Yun cried out as he approached Jian Chen from the front and prepared to drive his sword through his eyebrows. With a cold smile, Jian Chen formed a blade of pure azure and violet sword chi in his right hand before stabbing out at Qian Yun before he could strike first. The origin energy of the azure and violet sword chi was far too pure of an entity, so when Qian Yun's sword had made contact with it, there would inevitably be a crack on his sword. Upon taking damage from his saint weapon, Qian Yun took on heavy damage as well. Spitting out some blood from his mouth, he looked at the weapon in his hand in complete shock. Without a delay in his movements, Jian Chen stabbed with the origin energy of the sword spirits once more. With great ease, the Saint Force protective shroud around Qian Yun's body had been pierced straight through before Jian Chen's strike aimed for Qian Yun's head. What energy is this? Qian Yun cried out in terror before jumping backward to avoid it. While the origin energy formed sword had missed Qian Yun's head and allowed him to escape with his life intact, his entire left arm had been severed by the blade. Spitting out blood, Qian Yun began to drop to the ground looking extremely frail. Stifling a groan of pain, Qian Yun rose 1,000 meters into the air once more and stared at the blade in Jian Chen's hand. Just what is that energy? With its force, my saint weapon had been hit. Staring darkly, Jian Chen began to use his killing intent to glare at Qian Yun before chasing after him. Chapter 404, Punish the Heavens, Destroy the Stronghold. Seeing the incoming Jian Chen, Qian Yun looked startled. A single attack from him had damaged his saint weapon and his fighting spirit. Without delay, he immediately turned around and began to flee. Jian Chen stared at the fleeing Qian Yun with a cold sneer and called out after him. I will spare your life here today. Another day, you will come to personally witness the destruction of the Qiangan kingdom. May you realize your folly in meddling in this affair. Hearing this, Qian Yun's body began to shudder. Previously, he had thought Jian Chen to be someone beneath his notice. But now, he was fully aware of Jian Chen's strength and didn't doubt his ability to do as he said. In order for a kingdom to be destroyed, it did not mean that the inhabitants would need to be slaughtered. If all of the strongest members of the kingdom were killed, then the kingdom would only be a kingdom in name. If Jian Chen was strong enough to go against 5 Heaven Saint Masters by himself and win, then even if the Qiangan kingdom were to pool together every single Heaven Saint Master, they would still not have a good chance of winning. In this moment, Qian Yun's heart was filled with regret. If he had known Jian Chen's strength earlier, he would have stayed out of this affair completely. This has nothing to do with the Qiangan kingdom. If you have any grievances, then come after me and do not involve the innocent. Qian Yun called out behind him as he fled. Chang Wuji was overwhelmed with shock as he looked at the youngster that was Jian Chen. There was yet another sense of familiarity, but all Chang Wuji could feel at that moment was just shock. Although the 4 Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom weren't relatively strong, Qian Yun was a terrifying opponent to fight against after his ascension on becoming a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. It was only a matter of time before he became a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. It would take a considerable amount of energy before Chang Wuji could even dream of fighting him to a standstill. He never would have imagined that the youth in front of him would be able to not only sever the arm of Qian Yun, but to also force him to run with his tail tucked between his legs. Just who is he? I have never seen such a young Heaven Saint Master before. No matter how much I look at him, I feel as if I know him from somewhere. Chang Wuji was utterly confused as he thought to himself. This youth was far too strong, causing him to feel extremely curious on who he could be. But Chang Wuji made no attempt to leave. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters of the Pingyang Kingdom had cut off the 4 limbs of Jianghu, causing a rift of pure hatred between him and them. Today, if he did not behead the heads of the 4, then there would be no way that Chang Wuji would be leaving from this spot. The escape of Qian Yun had caused the remaining 4 Heaven Saint Masters to fall into despair. Qian Yun was a figure of absolute strength and dominance. With his departure, there would be no way for the 4 to have even the most remote of chances on stopping Jian Chen. At this moment, the origin energy of the sword spirits had already flew at the 4 men once more in an attempt to ruthlessly cut off their heads. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters had not yet discovered just how strong the origin energy was for themselves. So, instead of evading, they began to use their Earth-tier battle skills and charged to fight Jian Chen. Right now, they could only fight with the last of their strength. The advanced Earth-tier battle skill was their strongest option left remaining to them. With a look of disdain, Jian Chen's origin energy split apart into 4 blades. When the 2 sides clashed, the Saint Force from the 4 Saint weapons instantly blew outward with an explosive amount of force. The Heaven Saint Masters were sent flying back while the energy from the blast destroyed the entire ground around them. PCCH. As soon as they clashed, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters began to spit out blood from their mouths. In an instant, their faces paled as they looked at the new jagged edge on their Saint weapons from where the origin energy had made contact with it. And no. This isn't possible. Just how could a Heaven Saint Master destroy another Heaven Saint Master's Saint weapon? One of the 4 cried out in terror while the other 3 were in mute shock. Instead of saying something, Jian Chen continued to glare at them with his cold eyes. The wind blowing around him began to pick up in speed and ferocity before propelling him forward with alarming speed. In a flash, he had arrived at the 4 Heaven Saint Masters 30 meters away and lashed out with his origin energy-formed sword. As the sword came down, a flash of azure and violet could just barely be seen. 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters had been too fatigued to fight anymore and had their heads lopped off. However, instead of dying, their heads looked in horror at Jian Chen before a layer of energy sent them flying away into the sky. Propelling himself even faster with his wind element, Jiangchen thrashed out with his left hand at the two heads. Making contact, both heads immediately began to vibrate from the blow, scattering their spirits and killing them completely. A Heaven Saint Master was not as frail as an Earth Saint Master. They were capable of controlling the energy of the world itself and boasted a superior spirit than anyone below them. If one wanted to kill a Heaven Saint Master, they would need to extinguish the spirit. The two beheaded bodies fell from the sky with blood gushing out from their necks along with the listless two heads Jiangchen had just blasted. The death of two of their comrades came as a deadly shock to the remaining two Heaven Saint Masters. Looking at Jiangchen with terrified expressions, their hearts had already begun to spiral into depression. It hadn't even been long enough to boil a cup of tea since the battle had begun, but in that time, the strongest of the 5 Heaven Saint Masters had fled, the weakest 2 had been killed, and the remaining 2 had lost their fighting spirits. The enemy himself had been completely unharmed, a feat that left the other 2 trembling in total fear. After killing 2 Heaven Saint Masters, Jiangchen continued on and returned to the last 2 with his blade ready to strike. The last 2 survivors were heavily injured, but when they saw Jiangchen coming at them, they both blanched in horror before crying out, "Run!" Not a single speck of their fighting spirit remained. Snorting, Jiangchen flew even faster after them. With his wind element, he was capable of matching their speeds almost effortlessly. Waving his right hand, the origin energy he was wielding shot toward the 2 Heaven Saint Masters' heads. One of the Heaven Saint Masters turned around abruptly and activated his Earth Tier battle skill as he slashed at Jiangchen. When the 2 forces collided, yet another explosion could be seen while the Heaven Saint Master took advantage of the shock wave to propel him even farther away from Jiangchen. However, there was a new jagged chip on his saint weapon, causing the man to cough out another mouthful of blood in pain. At the same moment, another flash of color be seen. Jiangchen's second strike came as fast as his first strike, and before the Heaven Saint Master could get out of range from Jiangchen, the origin energy sliced through his throat like bean curd. With lightning-quick speed, Jiangchen's left hand shot forward and clapped the man's detached head, destroying his spirit from the inside with the special attack. Jiangchen took back the origin energy into his body and extended a finger on his right hand. All of the blood that had splayed out from the newly killed man instantly formed a blade that shot toward the final Heaven Saint Master. Caught off guard, the Heaven Saint Master felt something pierce through his chest from behind. Before he could even howl in pain, the air in front of him began to glow red as a sword made of fire suddenly began to expand and form a sea of fire that devoured even the skies. Not good. The Heaven Saint Master turned pale in fright. Waving his saint weapon, he tried to scatter the flames to reveal a path through. But he had not accounted that another flame sword would take shape right behind him and easily cut off his head. With a raise of his hand, a crossbolt covered with a dark glow shot forward and speared through the head with a bloody aftereffect. And just like that, all 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Qinhuang Kingdom were killed. As soon as the explosions on the battlefield had ended, the entire world seemed to have gone quiet. The myriad of soldiers beneath Jiangchen were still on the ground in a pile of corpses. The blood of many had dyed the earth a bloody red and filled the air with its pungent smell. Chang Wuji himself could only stand dumbly in midair. He was utterly shocked to the point of not even being able to talk. In almost no time at all, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters had been killed without the youth sustaining any injuries at all. Something like this would surprise anyone. Just then, the 4 heads of the Heaven Saint Masters began to float around while Chang Wuji watched. Let them float on top of the walls. Jiangchen spoke. Despite killing the 4 as revenge for his elder brother, he still did not feel happy. I thank Sire for his assistance. Chang Wuji's voice trembled with emotion as he spoke. If there was such a mysterious figure assisting the Jessen Kingdom, the kingdom would surely improve among the ranks of all the kingdoms nearby. Staying silent, Jiangchen looked back to the stronghold. Waving his hand, the ruins of the stronghold walls began to tremble for a moment before parts of the 50-meter-tall walls began to float into the air. With a bright glow of light surrounding the pieces, the debris began to smash into the stronghold itself one after another. Bang! 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 As the pieces smashed into the stronghold, the entire area began to shudder as if an earthquake had caused a nearby mountain to shatter apart. Under Jian Chen's control, the 50-meter-tall stronghold wall fell over onto the stronghold, causing serious structural damage to it. At that moment, the entire wall had finally fell to Jian Chen's might along with the stronghold itself. Everyone watching had been stunned into a dumb silence. Even Chang Wuji had his mouth wide open. The youth right in front of him was far too strong if he could easily destroy such a large stronghold. Although he was only a Heaven Saint Master, he had easily destroyed the building as easily as if he was knocking over a house of cards. Chapter 405, Strong Assisting Army. 1. This stronghold had protected the Qinhuang kingdom for many years and had weathered many storms, but it had been easily destroyed by Jian Chen. With the stronghold destroyed, Jian Chen could see the million remaining soldiers who were staring back at Jian Chen blankly. A look of abject horror and dread could be seen from their eyes at the floating figure of Jian Chen. The stronghold of the Qinhuang kingdom had been reduced to rubble and the 4 Heaven Saint Masters killed. This was a catastrophic blow to the Qinhuang kingdom. It had severely undermined the strength of the Qinhuang kingdom, and the death of the 4 Heaven Saint Masters was an irrevocably irreversible disaster that would also destroy the morale of their fighters. A Heaven Saint Master's existence was the pillar of strength for a kingdom. They were symbols of strength and honor with many years of fighting experience that countless of soldiers could rely on. With their victory, the soldiers would be confident. With their death, they would all lose any fighting spirit. Giving one last final glare at the million soldiers, Jian Chen began to ascend into the air. Within the next instant, Jian Chen streaked toward the center of the Qinhuang kingdom. Chang Wuji looked in the direction where Jian Chen had disappeared to with an apprehensive mutter. Just where is he going to cause trouble now? The Imperial Palace of the Qinhuang kingdom? On the way, Jian Chen continued to push his speed to the max as the wind element covered his entire body. The scenery whizzed by him along with cities of all size as he continued to travel toward the city with the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace of the Qinhuang Kingdom was about 7,000 kilometers away from the stronghold, meaning it would take 6 hours for Jian Chen to be able to fly there. 2 hours after Jian Chen's departure, the million-soldier assault force had gathered 10 kilometers away from the northern stronghold of the Jessan Kingdom. This was just in range for the middle-tier magical crystal cannons. At this moment, the soldiers had already completely assembled and were now waiting for the signal to start the besiegement. The 80-meter-tall stronghold had already been worn down to a terrible state. Many areas of the stronghold had already collapsed without anyone being able to enter. By the stronghold gates, the tempered steel doors had already plenty of indents and holes in them. They were so damaged that the gates could no longer open by themselves normally. On top of the stronghold walls were several armored soldiers that walked around anxiously. Each one of them had a sallow and dried-up expression that had definitely seen better days. It appears our Jessan Kingdom cannot escape from calamity now. There are 1 million soldiers standing out there ready to attack us, and another 2 million back within the strongholds of the Qinhuang Kingdom. With our measly 800,000 soldiers gathered here, we have no power to stop them. One of the armored elders spoke with a sigh. As of right now, our northern walls have 50 middle-tier magical crystal cannons and 200 primary-tier magical crystal cannons that are no better than scrap metal now. If we continue to use them, it would be a bigger danger to ourselves and would deplete our monster core supply. We cannot keep this on for much longer. Another heavily bandaged person spoke dejectedly. However long we can last will be our legacy. Even if we are to die here, we will not let them pass easily. One of the injured middle-aged man spoke with his eyes radiating bloodlust. Seeing the look on the man's face, the armored soldier to his side let out a long sigh. Changyang Ba, I know your son was captured by the Qinhuang Kingdom, but you needn't worry. Senior Wuji is far too strong, he'll bring Changyang Hu back. Changyang Ba had a grievous look on his face as he lamented. There are rumors saying that Changyang Hu had all 4 limbs hacked off and is now a cripple. Even if he returns, what will be the point? He will be living a life worse than death. Hearing this, the surrounding people let out a sigh. Although a strong enough Radiant Saint Master would be able to grow back the limbs, a Radiant Saint Master of that level was extremely rare to come by in the Tianyuan continent. Even if they were able to find one, the Changyang clan's influence was not even remotely close enough to bug a Radiant Saint Master of that level. In short, Changyang who had a nearly nil chance of returning to his previous state. Changyang Ba, don't forget about your fourth child, Changyang Shengtian. At the age of 15, he was able to condense and for a saint weapon. With his genius talent, he will definitely come back home with a strength no weaker than his eldest brother. Another armored man consoled. He was one of the 4 greatest clans within Lore City and was good friends with the Changyang clan. Upon hearing the name of his fourth child, Changyang Ba sighed. A few years ago, because of the power of the Huayun sect, the youngest child had been forced to leave home before he had even turned 16. Several years had passed now without any letter or information, leaving Changyang Ba to not even know if his child was still alive or not. Just then, a young armored youth came forward with a smile. Dear friends, I couldn't help but overhear you talk about Changyang Shengtian. Do you think I could hear more of his past achievements? Being able to create a saint weapon at the age of 15, how incredible. I was only able to make mine when I was 18 years old. I must admit I am curious to what type of person he is. Upon seeing this youth come forward, the other commanders began to call out to him enthusiastically. Dear Ming Dong, if you are that curious, then allow me to explain the story from the very beginning. An armored elder smiled. Explaining the story in a detailed manner, he talked about Changyang Shengtian's genius talent. As a saint, he was able to defeat several other saints and a great saint. An achievement like this had even earned the praise of the king, but because of the Huayun sect's influence, Jian Shen had been forced to leave from his home. Changyang Shengtian was only 15 by the time he left. It has been several years since his departure, but we don't even know if he is even in the Jessen kingdom. If he is no weaker than his eldest brother, then he would be a great saint master at the very least. The armored soldier sighed. Huayun sect. The armored youth muttered under his breath with an amazing glare before calming himself quickly. Leader Changyang, your son will definitely return home safely. Changyang Ba sighed with sorrow, that much is no longer important. I'm afraid in the next few days, my Changyang clan may no longer exist. Even if he returns, it will be to bury his family. If my Xianger is still alive, I sincerely hope he does not return so that he may avoid seeing this calamity. Please don't worry, Lord Changyang. I will definitely protect the Changyang clan with my entire strength. If I cannot, then I will beg my uncle Tian once more. The youth spoke grimly but honestly. Upon hearing the youth mention his uncle, the others began to light up. Dear Ming Dong, is your uncle Tian very strong? The extent, I do not know. But if my uncle Tian were to participate, then preventing this army in front of us would be no problem to him. Don't look at me like that, I have asked my uncle Tian many times before, but he was unwilling to participate in the war. The youth explained. Hearing this, the men all looked dejected once more. Just at that moment, a cyan-robed elder came walking in with a look of bitter anguish on his face. Changyang Ba's eyes lit up when he saw the return of the elder and immediately called out to him, Changbai, you're back. How is Ahu, did you bring him back? Chang Wuji let out a great sigh as he spoke painfully, Leader, the young master was successfully brought back without danger to his life. But in the future, Changyang Ba instantly grew pale as he listened to Chang Wuji's words. Among the 4 children he had, the eldest son and youngest son were both geniuses of the clan. With the 4th child's current conditions unknown, the eldest son's future in jeopardy and the 3rd child with no talent in cultivation, Changyang Ba wouldn't be able to find another capable child to succeed him. After a long period of time, Changyang Ba stilled his emotions and let out a sigh to the sky. As long as he is alive, that is good. Whatever the future may hold, we shall see to it later. Chang Wuji had remained silent, but he shared the same sorrowful look as Changyang Ba. His feelings and Changyang Ba were of the same, with Changyang Hu in such a miserable state, they were both in pain. After all, Chang Wuji had looked after him growing up, and although they were not family, they were closer than family. The several men around them were quiet, but their faces were grim. The calamitous situation the Jessan kingdom was facing was unavoidable now. Before the day was over, all of their hatred would be buried with them in the ground. After some time, Chang Wuji squashed his sorrows and spoke, "Leader, I have a piece of good information I should perhaps announce. When I went to rescue the young master, I came across a mysterious youth. By himself, he was able to kill 4 of the Qinhuang kingdom's heaven saint masters and completely level the entire stronghold." Immediately, every single person there was astounded. Each one of them looked at Chang Wuji in disbelief before another elder spoke. "Senior Wuji, what did you say? 4 of the Qinhuang kingdom's heaven saint masters were killed by a single youth? Is that true?" Chang Wuji waved his head, causing the 4 bloody heads of the heaven saint masters to appear onto the table from his space ring. Seeing the 4 heads, everyone immediately became silent in utter shock. Ming Dong's eyes flashed brightly as he asked, "Senior Wuji, did the person who killed these 4 say his name?" "I don't know, by the time I arrived, the young master had already been saved. It seems that there is some sort of relationship between the young master and him." Hearing this, Ming Dong had a look of contemplation on his face with his eyes flashing with curiosity. Afterward, Chang Wuji floated the heads of the 4 heaven saint masters ahead of the walls for the soldiers to see and boost their morale. Suddenly, 2 furious roars could be heard as a red and yellow streak of light flew toward the Jessan kingdom's strongholds. With a huge amount of power radiating from their bodies, the soldiers below suddenly felt themselves breathless. Chapter 406, Strong Assisting Army, 2. Suddenly, 2 furious roars could be heard as a red and yellow streak of light flew toward the Jessan kingdom's strongholds. With a huge amount of power radiating from their bodies, the soldiers below suddenly felt themselves breathless. 2 of the heaven saint masters sent to protect the army had instantly gone berserk when they saw the heads. Stepping forward bravely, Chang Wuji prepared himself to stop the 2 heaven saint masters. At the same time, another ripple of energy surged from within the stronghold as another heaven saint master stood by Chang Wuji's side. The newcomer was yet another elder with white hair that flew about in the wind haphazardly. Although ruffled looking, this was the headmaster of the Jessan kingdom's Kargath Academy, Kafir. When the 2 heaven saint masters saw the floating heads of the 4 dead men on the Jessan kingdom's stronghold walls, their entire bodies began to shudder and shake. Combined with the 2 heaven saint masters Chang Wuji had killed earlier, that had meant the Qinhuang kingdom had now lost a total of 6 heaven saint masters. A loss of this magnitude was far too much for the Qinhuang kingdom to accept. The 4 heaven saint masters stared at each other with furious eyes, but not a single word was said. With a ripple of energy, the already teetering gates of the stronghold had begun to shake once more. Chang Wuji and Kafir had both experienced countless of battles and were injured after such a prolonged war. At their peak, they were 5th cycle heaven saint masters, but previously, Kafir had been struck through the chest with an explosive amount of saint force, greatly damaging his inner organs. "Kafir, you stand back. I'll deal with them." Chang Wuji snarled as a dangerous gleam took over his eyes. In a sudden explosion of power, his fighting strength suddenly tripled at the sight of one of his opponents charging straight for Kafir and instantly went to protect him. While Chang Wuji wasn't fully recovered, he was still considerably strong. Not only was he able to block the 2 Qinhuang Kingdom Heaven Saint Masters, but he had the advantage. He must be using some strange method in order to empower himself. The 2 Heaven Saint Masters clearly understood that Chang Wuji had managed to strengthen himself. But Chang Wuji remained silent, knowing that he couldn't continue at this pace forever. It would require his entire concentration so that he could continue fighting. After several exchanges, one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Qinhuang Kingdom had already been forced to take damage from one of Chang Wuji's Earth Tier battle skills. All that remained was the other Heaven Saint Master, who immediately felt the pressure on him. Kafir looked at the battle with a pale face. With his inner organs nearly completely destroyed, he had already lost his ability to fight in the meantime. Despite his willingness to fight, he could only stand and watch from the sidelines without being able to join in. "Headmaster, please come down to heal." A middle-aged man walked up to Kafir's side. This concerned man was the vice-headmaster of Kargath Academy, Biyao. Kafir shook his head. "The wounds on me are far too heavy. Even the Radiant Saint Masters within the fort are unable to heal me. Even if they could, they have expended far too much energy these past few days and are now powerless." "Headmaster, please don't worry. Senior Wuji is extremely strong, he will definitely beat the Qinhuang Kingdom people." Biyao consoled. Shaking his head again, Kafir spoke, "His situation isn't too different from me. All of the Radiant Saint Masters within the Jessan Kingdom have been scattered to the cardinal strongholds, but even they aren't enough to compare to the might of our enemies. The wounds Chang Wuji suffered surely haven't recovered yet. Even if he were to heavily injure the two Heaven Saint Masters, it'd be of no use with the army of Radiant Saint Masters they have with them. If we do not kill them quickly, then they'll just heal themselves up." First form of the wild python. A large roar could be heard as Chang Wuji's body began to exude saint force in violent waves after waves. The saint weapon in his hand ascended into the air before a giant amount of pressure blanketed the area as if the entire world was under his control. The entire world began to darken as a fierce gale began to blow. Sand blew everywhere, covering the skies with a gray mist as if foretelling the end of the world. "This is his Heaven tier battle skill, retreat." The two Heaven Saint Masters blanched in shock. Without any further delay, they quickly began to fly backward. Unfortunately, only one of them had been able to escape with their life. The other one had been locked into place due to the Heaven tier battle skill's might. With the restriction from the battle skill, he had no chance of moving at all. During the initialization period of the Heaven tier battle skill, Chang Wuji had let out a roar before releasing the earth-destroying energy down onto the head of the stuck Heaven Saint Master, cleaving him in two. The surplus power from the Heaven tier battle skill continued on down to the ground, splitting the earth underneath, leaving behind a 10-meter-long rift. The surrounding soldiers from the Qinhuang Kingdom were afflicted by the attack as well, many of them dying. After the usage of the Heaven tier battle skill, Chang Wuji's body began to sway side to side violently before ultimately falling to the ground. His already pale face was now devoid of color and looked disease-stricken. The final remaining Heaven Saint Master from the Qinhuang Kingdom had a look of dejection on his face. This war could be considered a heavy loss for the Qinhuang Kingdom with already 7 Heaven Saint Masters dead. This battle alone had ended in their loss despite their advantage in numbers as well. Suddenly, a formidable amount of energy could be felt from behind as several strong-looking people came flying through the air. "Qinhuang Kingdom, our Hidden Dragon Kingdom have come to provide assistance in your invasion." An elderly voice suddenly called out. Upon hearing the identity of the newcomer, every single person within the Jessan Kingdom instantly fell into despair. Even the headmaster of Kargath Academy sighed, "The heavens have forgotten about our Jessan Kingdom." Chang Wuji looked off toward the 4 flying Heaven Saint Masters in despair as well before sighing and returning to the walls of the stronghold. Kafir and him were the remaining 2 Heaven Saint Masters left protecting the northern stronghold of the Jessan Kingdom. With the both of them having no more strength, they would not be able to last against 5 united Heaven Saint Masters. Quickly, the Qinhuang Kingdom and Hidden Dragon Kingdom converged together. Looking at the Heaven Saint Masters from the other kingdom, the remaining Heaven Saint Master from the Qinhuang Kingdom had a gleeful smile on his face. "Could it be your Hidden Dragon Kingdom has already broken through the western stronghold?" Laughing out loud, one of the elders from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom smiled, naturally. "We've already broken through the defenses and slain 2 Heaven Saint Masters while the third one fled. As of right now, our army is marching toward the Jessan Kingdom's Imperial city. We heard that the northern stronghold was being quite stubborn, so the 4 of us decided to come as support. I'm convinced that the eastern stronghold will be soon destroyed by the Blue Wind Kingdom." The elder from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom spoke with a loud voice to attack the morale of the soldiers within the stronghold. Sure enough, as soon as they heard those words, many of the soldiers began to lose their fighting courage. Several of them had dropped to the ground with stony face while others had already started to strip themselves of their armor and adopted a surrendering position. "Jessan Kingdom, lay down your arms and we will spare you." The elder spoke out from Midair. His voice was magnanimously grand from way high in the air. Our Jessen kingdom has no cowards. We would rather die than be slaves. One of the commanders called out without fear of death. Impudence. The elder's eyes took on a dangerous glint as he waved his hand. A yellow-colored sword suddenly materialized out of thin air before flying straight for the commander. Bang! The earth element sword struck the commander instantly and killed him without delay. Commander Ling! Commander Ling! The commanders nearby began to cry out grievously at the death of their friend. Chang, Wuji and Kafir both sighed before giving each other a knowing look. Both of them had a resolved face as they both floated into the sky toward the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. They would both rather die in battle than be resigned to their fates as slaves. The Heaven Saint Master from the Qinhuang Kingdom looked at Chang Wuji with a look of utmost loathing. Chang Wuji, Kafir, you too truly wish to die? Then allow me to help you on that path. Comrades, let us combine our strengths and kill them completely. Fine with me. I've heard rumors say that Chang Wuji has a heaven-tier battle skill. Just in case anything unexpected happens, let us fight together. The elder from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom spoke. Soon after, the 5 Heaven Saint Masters flew at the 2 others with an intent to kill. Chang Wuji and Kafir were both expressionless, but their hearts were steeled with their resolve. Just at this crucial moment, another force of tremendous energy could be felt coming from far away. The only thing that could be seen from far away was the fact that there were 5 Heaven Saint Masters that were enveloped with a brilliant spectrum of light as they flew over. At the sudden appearance of these 5, even the Qinhuang and Hidden Dragon Kingdom Heaven Saint Masters stopped in surprise as they looked at the incoming figures. Did the Blue Wind Kingdom already finish breaking through the eastern stronghold and sent people to assist us? Not possible, the Blue Wind Kingdom wouldn't be arriving from that direction. The Hidden Dragon Kingdom Heaven Saint Masters began to talk among each other for a moment before turning grim and looking to the 5 newcomers. Quickly, the 5 Heaven Saint Masters stopped 100 meters away. There were 4 elders and a single middle-aged person. Leading the front was an elder with a pure white magical beast in hand whose curious eyes continuously observed its surroundings. By now, each one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Hidden Dragon Kingdom were on guard since these 5 newcomers were all complete strangers. They didn't know a single one of them, meaning that they were not from around here. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.